going to certainly share it soon again. But and does it say specifically related to Tu BiShvat?
Yeah.
Incredible.
This is from this. Yeah. So the kavvanot are old.
Yeah.
Old.
Fantastic.
It's not a custom that people, do very, very much anymore.
Right.
But that's not, we don't care whether people are doing it anymore. We want it to be available so people can see it and learn from it. And if they want to daven the kavvanot for Tu BiShvat, kol hakavod, it'll be very interesting.
So is this the bracha you were mentioning before that David Seidenberg was involved in, or this is a different bracha? This is a more traditional, like original bracha.
Well, he has a supplement that he shares, and so I linked to that. And inside the Priyei Hadar is the prayer for, and that's what I was mentioning. He also shares that prayer from inside the Priyei Hadar separately. He calls it, prayer for the earth.
Right.
It is.
Okay. So just welcome. I just want everyone to know that that we just got into live feed. Number two, my dear friend and colleague, Dr. Elly Moseson, is on. And he's going to, as I mentioned earlier, very briefly, he's going to present the opening on about Chasidim versus Misnagdim part that we're doing. But let's just finish this 2 more minutes because it's likely Elly has some insight. So we were just discussing. So Elly, have you ever met Aaron Darity, who runs Open Siddur Project?
Not directly. We once communicated, I believe, briefly over some quote or another many years ago.
Right.
Oh, nice to see you again, then.
Right. So he was just showing us what he has up on, in addition to multi versions of the Kabbalistic and other Haggadot for Tu BiShvat, most based on the Priyei Hadar. He has this kavvanot, the Rosh Hashanah Lanot, which you say is from the 11th century?
Yeah.
That is incredible. Wait, so let me just show it now. Here, kavvanot Rabbi Yehuda ben Reb Hillel Halevi.
Wow.
So the genetic kavvanot, you say this is coming. This specific one is from Cairo Geniza, or 3 sets written. It's from the Bodleian Library.
Manuscript E33. The shelf number is 2737.
Yeah, I see that. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So most likely it is from Cairo Geniza. Or not necessarily. Oh, who knows? Okay,
probably not. But
probably not. Okay,
but we have other of this genre that we have from the.
Got it. So it starts off with traditional blessing. This is just like Shemana Esrei.
Great. So the kavvanot are piyutim integrated
into like Yartzeit a bit, right? So this is an Aleph base scheme. Aiden is the in the singular, as we know, specifically. Behilo is also used for Hilo name. Okay, so it's a something with half and then B something. Interesting layout. And then there's with Shliach Tzibur. Oh, this is for Shemana Esrei of Tu BiShvat at night or the next day. I suppose very interesting. So God said, I'm just going to skim all the way down.
All the kavvanot is a genre of piyut integrated inside the Amidah. That's what the kavvanot
are. Yeah, I did not grow up with it, but we
very few people are, as far as we don't have the pages.
Oh, here we are. Oh, here's a facsimile of as they used to say. Very cool. Did you transcribe this, or was it already typed out?
This is the work of my friend
Menachem Zulai, I see.
Isaac Ganswerk Meyer.
Isaac Ganswerk Meyer,
Mm-hmm.
and so he helped go over the text. It seems like it was printed out transcribed in 1936.
Menachem Zulai did the first transcription. Isaac transcribed it digitally from Menachem Zulai's work and added the Nikud.
Very cool.
Which is something he does. That's something that's part of the genius of this wonderful contributor, Isaac Meyer. Is he will also cancellate texts that haven't been cancelized.
Was he the one you worked together on Megillat Yehudit?
Yeah.
For Hanukkah?
Yeah, the Megillat Yehudit, the medieval Megillat Yehudit, not the book of Yehudit.
Right. The one year.
Megillah,
So that was translating it, or from Latin, or
it's another manuscript that's at the Bodleian, and that was printed in its transcription, and then we added the Nikud and cancellated it.
Cool. Yeah. So really, I highly encourage everyone to check out opensiddur.org, and it's an endless resource. And you're always adding more, and a lot of it of open is that people like us that are able to contribute in ways of translation, or
it's also a great, wonderful variety.
Mm-hmm.
Things you wouldn't necessarily associate with liturgy, yet it shows up there, and for good reason.
Yeah. Do you know, Elly? You know that they found not long ago, Isaac Bashevis Singer has a Yartzeit, a whole prayer in Hebrew.
Oh, yeah.
And it was recently published, so he put it up an open.
A serious thing, or
it seems like it's serious, but it's full of compassion. Like this focus, especially he's aware, he's directing to the divine, but it's also mainly about being open in a humanist way between people, and being feeling love for each other, helping each other, being humble, compassionate. Yeah. So if you look it up.
I'll put the link in there for it.
Okay, in the chat for you, Elly. So I don't want, just not to go too far. I don't know your schedule tonight, as we mentioned, is usually we do our larger theme at the end, but this time, once in a while, we flip it, like tonight. It's also Yud Shvat, Holy Yom Tov, or whatever way. When I grew up, Yud Shvat was more somber. It was like the Yartzeit of the previous Rebbe, the Friedrich.
Basi Legani,
plus it was the Rebbe's coronation. It was a big thing also. That was in the 70s. But for something happened from like 1980 and on, when it became like the 30 years of leadership, that the emphasis became more that Yud Shvat is the Rebbe's coronation. That's the ikir about it. That's the ikir shchina about it. So that we have that too. So it's very apropos that for a night like this, that we do focus on Hasidic material, straight up, and one of many amazing things about the Hasidic movement and the evolution thereof is that as much as it went so far down the line for what's coming on to like 250 years, I suppose, right? And almost by over 250 years, if you consider from the Baal Shem Tov.
1772,
or either I'm saying from like even the Baal Shem Tov's living, let's say 1740s. So 280,
250,
right? So it's Mamish going, hey, Elly, welcome. Great to see you. Yeah, kind of good Yom Tov, happy Yud Shvat. That's your thing. All right. So Gewalt. So tonight, Mamish, we're going to be dealing with the Zach. Once in a while we start with a Niggun. We could do that later also. Elly, you know any Niggun from the Maggid, possibly?
There is some that are attributed.
If you could think of
some
one.
Famous. There are a couple of famous ones. I don't remember.
Or Baal Shem Tov even we could sing. So I'm sure the Niggun from the Baal Shem Tov was passed on to this Maggid students too. And so we know it's a real Farbrengen, as we say in Yiddish, delight. Geschmack delight. It's like to have my Chaim Elly, who we've been must know you already like 20 years, no?
Getting there, yeah.
So, getting there.
No, actually,
Very
yes,
close,
more than
yeah.
20 years. Well,
More than
I
20
met you, yes.
In Yerushalayim.
Yes.
And then we wound up together at Columbia University. I was doing my graduate work, studies. You were doing your undergraduate, and we even became living mates. And it was a very it was a highlight time of my life, and being with you and just being able to rapport in ways that we not many can with each other in these ways. Some, like you could say, we're specialized friends in a way, and also in very you devoted your life to and devoting your life to the study of Kabbalah, Hasidism, and Jewish or even non-Jewish mysticism and ideas and philosophy and theology and what have you, or Sufism and what have and different trends of religion and mysticism and the psychology of the unconscious and the dream state. These are all amazing areas, subjects. So it's not just about all the Judaic materials, which it is, but it's tapping into something universal too, and ways almost like a certain psychological soul set. We speak about a mindset. Say it's like a way that that these amazing figures really get into their heads and hearts, basically. See through all the Kabbalistic mumble jumble, which may seem like utter randomness and just ink on paper to some, that within that is encoded the deepest profound insights
into humanity, into
humanity,
seeing them as human beings above all.
Amen. Yes, and exactly like we were speaking before you came on, the idea of Adam being, that universal element too related to it. So, so this is what we'll do. This to introduce you, that you're currently teaching. You started last semester. I mean, we were both as students at Columbia, and now you're teaching there. Yes. So you did. Last semester, was a seminar on Kabbalah.
Philosophy and Jewish mysticism.
And Jewish
medieval philosophy and
medieval philosophy, right? And this semester is devoted related to what we're involved in these days, Hasidism, right? The Hasidic movement, or I think Professor Elly Moseson, when he had a class on like Hasidism and Sufism or something, or
the
just
Kabbalah and Sufism, yes.
Or there was something on Hasidism. The way he described, maybe it was a different stuff. I forget already. They described, instead of writing Hasidism, he wrote 18th century Eastern European Jewish pietism.
Pietism, yes.
Even though pietism, you don't have to be Hasidic to be pious. And we already spoke not long ago, maybe have insights, the Vilna Gaon was called a Gaon a Chassid.
Of course.
Exactly, and that the Hasidim almost appropriated the term Chassid. And that's what that itself must have rubbed the Misnagdim the wrong way, and that's why they couldn't bring themselves to call them Chasidim because of its association to who they revered in the Vilna Gaon. So they would call them Karliners or the Katz, right, or other almost disparaging names. Hasidim, we saw called them.
Yeah, and this is actually a theme that we'll see in the letter of
right.
Shmelke, where this is a big focus of what a big issue that he focuses on is who has the right to define who is allowed and who is not allowed to be a pietist.
Right. Okay. Fantastic. Perfect segue. So now we started after we went through a few weeks, the Misnagdim's issues and allegations. We had a whole list, right? Elly, you may have seen it.
Yeah, I saw that. Yes.
And then there's and then we went through their materials. Last week we started with the response of the Chasidim. We read excerpts of 2 letters of the Alter Rebbe of Chabad, where he describes what happened then the winter of 1772, him and with Mendel Harducker and the debate in Shklov and other stuff. So that is like that. We get a sense of what was happening, the actual events on the ground, Hasidic POV, which we showed confirmed what the Misnagdim themselves wrote about Mendel Harducker being, or whom they called Mendel Minsker, being in Vilna. So we have confirmation on both sides about that. And now we're getting through the responses of the Chasidim. And we mentioned this in the past, that the prime student of the Maggid was one of the prime students, was Shmelke of Nikolsburg, and he wrote a florid yet insightful letter about response to this excommunications of 1772. So invited Rebbe Elly, Dr. Elly, to present on Reb Shmelke in general and specifically this letter, particularly since you, Elly, published material. Actually, I have it here and I could show it in the journal Zutot here, right? Kol Nidre in Nikolsburg, 1775, early account of the Hasidic sermon and Drash, where you give us a thorough yet to the point description of Reb Shmelke and how he wound up in Nikolsburg and all that, and also the style, how this specific sermon that you found in his work, Devar Shmuel, gives us not only the words but also the contextual reaction of the audience. So that's a fascinating piece. So certainly you know more about Reb Shmelke, and therefore, please, Reb Elly,
Thank you, Baruch.
Yes.
Well, I finally made it. I mean, I always see the invitations, and I always feel like this would be great to join, but it does start. It's a very different time zone than I'm used to. But I'm glad for this opportunity. I'm not sure what I'm doing here. Whatever I'm gonna say, everybody can really hear from you. There's very little that I think I know that you don't, and I hope your audience must know by now what kind of a privilege it is to have this every week and hearing you. But I like you said, I did write something recently about Shmelke, and so it's still fresh in my mind, and so I'd be happy to talk a little bit about him and maybe connect it with this whole Hasidim Misnagdim debate theme. So we don't know a whole lot about Shmelke's biography, like most early Hasidic figures. Their names, we have teachings from them at times, and we have some legends, but we don't know a whole lot about their lives. We know he was born in 1726 to Reb Tzvi Hersh, who was the rabbi in the town of Charkiv, that's in present-day Western Ukraine. At the time, it was part of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. And he was a Horowitz. He was part of this famous, important rabbinic family, one of the most prominent rabbinic families in Eastern Europe. Not just East Poland. Even actually, they come from I think originally from Bohemia. So he ends up returning kind of west, making the full circle, as we'll see. And there's some traditions that say that his father was a student of the Besht. We don't really know that for sure, but it's certainly possible that they knew each other. They didn't live that far away. They were more or less the same region. Chartkiv is not too far from the places the Besht was living. We don't know a whole lot about his childhood. He studied with his father, it seems, and then with his older brother, and then, but he becomes a rabbi in Poland. So he moves to central Poland. First in Richevol, which is a city there in Poland, in around 1754. He becomes a rabbi there, so he's a young man. And later he becomes a rabbi in another town not too far from there, in Shineva, around 1766. He has a yeshiva of sorts. We don't know exactly how large or what exactly it looked like and how organized it was. The yeshivas in this period were really in decline. There were very few yeshivas the way they used to be. There were still some in the West, but in the East there really weren't many. But he seems to have led what is referred to as yeshiva. And he had a number of students who we know later become some of the most important figures in the Hasidic movement. You have Levi Yitzchok of Berditchev, Yitzchok, the Chayza of Lublin, student of his, maybe also the Maggid of Koznitz, who may have studied with him, it's not entirely clear, and several others. Now, Shmelke's younger brother is also an important rabbinic figure, Pinchas. He was later the author of very important rabbinic works, the Makna, the Afla. And he studied with his older brother for a while. They were very close throughout their lives. He also became a rabbi, first in Witkov, which is in Poland as well. Later on, he's a rabbi in Lechowicz in Lithuania. And at some point in the 1760s, we don't know exactly when, both of the brothers come under the influence of Doig Ber, the Maggid of Mezritch. They visit him. There are different legends about the meeting. No, it's very hard to rely on these stories, but it's somehow they came to know him, and it seems were impressed, and they adopted and kind of got involved in what was happening around the Maggid. You may have talked about it before. The Maggid of Mezritch, a very important figure. He's very often portrayed as the successor of the Besht. He's not exactly the successor. There wasn't really a movement like that for there to be a successor at the time. But he's one of the most important students of the Besht, and he's really responsible for kind of creating the Hasidic movement as we know it. He has many students, very talented, creative, energetic students who go around and spread. Basically, they're responsible for spreading the Hasidic movement throughout Eastern Europe. If not for him and his students, there may have been something would have been very limited, probably to the region, and would have looked quite different. But so the Maggid is an extremely important figure. Also, his teachings were very influential, really defined Hasidic thought for a long time after. So we don't know how and when exactly they came in touch with the Maggid. We don't know how much time they spent with the Maggid, but you can tell. Shmelke's, so he wrote. We have a book of Reb Shmelke's sermons from his later years, and you can see very clearly an influence of the Maggid's ideas and the ideas that were circulating among these early Hasidic groups. So he very clearly absorbed these ideas and practices. In 1772, both brothers got job offers. Reb Shmelke was offered the position of chief rabbi in the city of Nikolsburg in Moravia, most important city in Moravia, most important Jewish community in Moravia, and Reb Pinchas was offered the position of rabbi in Frankfurt, a very important town in the German lands, and they moved from Poland and Lithuania, in the case of Pinchas, to the west. And that's an interesting trajectory. Actually, throughout the 18th century, there was a tendency of Western communities to seek out Eastern trained rabbis. Rabbis from the East was seen as better scholars or more certain kind of education that was highly valued in the West, and with them we see that too. Their own children, both the children of Reb Pinchas and the children of Shmelke, also move west and get important positions. And there's a whole book on this. We think of Eastern Europe as Jews migrating from the West, but there was also a certain kind of back movement in various ways at various points. Before they went west, though, they made a trip to visit the Maggid, and this we know from a number of sources. So sometime in 1772, it seems they both visited the Maggid of Mezritch. It's during this visit that Shnei Zalman of Legani, the founder of Chabad Hasidism, met them, and this is mentioned by his children in the introduction to his Shulchan Aruch. They mention the encouragement of the brothers of Shnei Zalman's project of writing the Shulchan Aruch. And there are other indications there are other sources that mention this trip. In 1773, Rebbe Shmelke arrives in Nikolsburg as the rabbi of the city. He's appointed the year before, but he arrives in 1773. And about a year later, he becomes, in addition to the chief rabbi of Nikolsburg, he becomes the provincial rabbi, was called, of all of Moravia. So he becomes the most important rabbinic figure in the entire region. The seat of the chief rabbi of Moravia was in Nikolsburg traditionally, so he was both the local rabbi and the provincial rabbi. Now he arrives in Nikolsburg, and we have a description. So there was a man named Avraham Trebish, who was a resident of Nikolsburg, and he wrote a chronicle. He wrote a chronicle of the region. Really, it's about some royal history, some local Jewish history, different major events that happened, and he mentions the arrival at one point in this chronicle of Reb Shmelke. Let me see if I can find the paper I have. Here it is. And he mentions the arrival of Shmelke on the eve of the host. So it's a major event. A new rabbi, and especially this important famous figure from comes on the eve of the Holy Sabbath on the 27th day of the month of Sivan in that year, and he's referring to the year 1773. The great and holy Gaon, the Chassid and Kabbalist, our teacher and master Shmelke Halevi Horowitz, came to our place, to Nikolsburg. Before he came, he had been a teacher and rabbi in the town of Richevol in Poland. His very arrival was impressive, as it had not rained for several weeks before he came. The sky was iron, the land was copper, and on the day of his arrival, we were blessed with rain like in the days of Koine Amago. Then in the year 1775, he also became provincial rabbi. So this was people remember it was a memorable thing. They got a new rabbi, so it's not so strange that they would mention it in the Chronicle. But he gives a very warm description, and he mentions, in the eyes of the locals, his arrival coincided with this miraculous rain, and they saw that as a sign of his piety. Now, in addition to rain, it seems Rebbe Shmelke also brought with him Hasidic ideas and practices. So we have a collection, as I mentioned, of his sermons. It's called Divrei Shmuel. It was printed many years later from a manuscript, but these are sermons. They all date from his years in Nikolsburg. They're not from when he was in Poland. They're from after he comes to Nikolsburg. And as I mentioned before, they're very characteristically Hasidic. They're in content and the things he talks about and the way he talks about them. So he did not change his Hasidic behavior or interests or teachings when he arrives in Nikolsburg. And it seems that he also functioned very much like Hasidic Rebbe. He was also Rosh Yeshiva. He founded a very important yeshiva in Nikolsburg, attracted many students, had a great reputation. Again, some of the later to be Hasidic leaders studied in Nikolsburg with him as well. But also a lot of local Moravian students studied there. But he also seems to have functioned like a Hasidic Rebbe. He leads prayers. He's not just, a rabbi traditionally had a very limited role. He dealt with halachic issues. He gave 2 sermons a year, generally speaking. There were exceptions. Some rabbis like to preach more often, but generally speaking, a rabbi would give 2 sermons a year on Shabbos HaGadol before Pesach and Shabbos Tshuva between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. That's it. And they were not prayer leaders. That was the Chazan, they generally did not play that role. He seems to have functioned as Chazan, as Maggid, as preacher, and as rabbi, and as Rosh Yeshiva, meaning he combined many different roles, very much like some of the Hasidic rabbis back in Eastern Europe. And we have and this is what I published really. I published a translation of a sermon, an account really, of a sermon he gave before Kol Nidre in the year 1775. So Tafkuf Lamed Vav. Rosh Hashanah, yes, Yom Kippur, Tafkuf Lamed Vav. And so I translated and I wrote a kind of introduction to it about his life and the significance of this sermon. It's a letter that one of the members of the community, apparently a student of his in some sense, writing to a friend who was away. We don't know where he was. He was away. He couldn't be with them for the high holy days. And he's writing to his friend describing this phenomenal experience of Reb Shmelke's Kol Nidre. And it's a very unique document. We don't have a lot of first-hand descriptions of what it's like to hear Hasidic sermons, to see and experience Hasidic Rebbes in this way. And this is the earliest that I know of that describes such a performance by a Hasidic figure. And it gives you a lot of insight, both into the experience, what it's like, and also how he was viewed in the community in Nikolsburg. So I'll read it, just a bit of the opening and the ending of the letter. right? And he describes, the performance. It's all he's the chazan, and he's also the preacher at the same time. And this fascinating way of how he kind of weaves his sermon. So before Kol Nidre, it's very traditional for the rabbi or some other or a preacher to give a sermon to the community, and he weaves the sermon into the prayers, into the gestures of prayers, and the different stages of this Kol Nidre prayer service in a really phenomenal way.
If you want, I could share screen the text on my end.
Sure. I'll read the first and maybe the last paragraph, so we can. So this is included in the back of his collection of sermons, but it seems to be separate. It's a letter that, like I said, one of his students wrote to his friend who couldn't make it, who couldn't be there. So for Yom Kippur of the year 5536, 1775, that which a disciple of the above mentioned brilliant scholar, this is Shmelke, wrote to his friend about the conduct on the days of law. How the events and things that happened and that Shmelke did. And he describes, before Kol Nidre, about an hour and a half before the time for prayers, all those who fear and tremble before the word of God gathered in the old synagogue. And this is the famous old synagogue of Nikolsburg. There's an interesting article about this building. It was the seat of the head of the chief rabbi of Nikolsburg and of Moravia. So this was his kind of royal seat, so to speak. And the fact, he didn't have to pray there all the time, but the fact that this is occurring in the most kind of important synagogue of the community is significant in itself. So this is happening in the old synagogue. So that the entire hall was filled. It's really a big. It's full. The place is full. Then our master, teacher, and rabbi.
Did the synagogue survive the
No, I don't think so. But there's we know the architecture. There's been a study of the architecture. I don't think it survives. There's pictures and there's a map and I don't think it survives. Yeah. Then our master, teacher, and rabbi made the merciful one guard and keep him, came to the door of the synagogue. He shows up, wrapped in his tallis, and he entered. As he made his way from the doorway to the place of the ark, he recited in a loud voice and with great weeping the verse, from on this day shall the atonement be made for you to cleanse until, etc., as well as the Mishnah, Rebbe. So these are parts of the liturgy. If I remember correctly, it's stuff you say before the Kol Nidre prayers. But he begins it. It's a performance. He walks in, he's walking over, and he's already beginning the performance. And he reads all these other verses. At the sound of his crying and weeping, everyone immediately burst into loud sobbing. He's getting them, worked up a bit. When he arrived before the ark, he began to recite verses that roused to repentance and rend open hearts of stone, including, and he gives a list of verses, these emotional verses of repentance, etc. In the midst of reciting, he delivered many words of admonishment. So he's giving musar, he's giving kind of arousing to repentance based on these verses. So he's reciting these verses, and he's also darshaning them. He's expounding them as kind of in a moralizing manner. But I could not understand them very well because of all the weeping. There's such a commotion. Everyone's weeping and wailing. The writer says he couldn't hear very well exactly, so he's not recording these details because all the weeping and the noise of the great tumult and wailing that filled the synagogue, for there were about 100 people gathered there. So we get a figure. of how many people were present. He then began to speak about the virtues of this very holy and awesome day of Yom Kippur, and how on this day it was very easy for a person to obtain assistance to achieve salvation and redeem a soul from the pit. And then he goes on with a parable, very Hasidic thing, but also classic preaching. He gives a parable, and then he gives different interpretations of classical texts, and talking about repentance and self-sacrifice, and all kinds of throwing in mystical ideas about connecting to the Torah and then connecting to each other, and he leads them all in this very emotional recitation of Shema Yisrael. At one point, and repentance about masturbation apparently was a big theme. For many preachers at the time, and also for Shmelke. And this is a time to repent for that. And he goes on, etc. And then, so he concludes. The writer concludes on page 24. The 24, yeah. Yeah. So these are some of the and then he finishes. So he gave the basically the content of and that through all this, at different points, he goes to the ark, the Aron HaKodesh, takes out the Sefer Torah, and he uses the gesture of removing the Sefer Torah as a basis for his homily, and he talks about how we now have to connect to the Torah. So he's constantly weaving in the parts of the performance of the prayer service into the sermon in a very remarkable way. These are some of the conduct of His Holiness, our master, teacher, and rabbi, the brilliant scholar and pious man. May the merciful one guard and keep him, which we have written in brief, with just essential words to fulfill the wish of my dear friend. Right? He's writing to his friend. May his light shine. Blessed is the eye that has seen all of his conduct throughout the entire year, and even more so during these holy days of awe, until after Simchas Torah. And as God is my witness, I have been overwhelmed by the burden of communal affairs, which has increased upon me now at the end of the year, more so than all the rest of the year. So he's a functionary, some functionary in the community. He's very busy now. But because of the great love for him that is in my heart, meaning his friend, I did not give sleep to my eyes, nor slumber to my eyelids, so as to fulfill that which he requested of me these many times, to send him news about what it's like to be part of this experiencing Shmelke's avodah, his worship. And he was certainly already learned. He has certainly already learned about the youth. So he's saying you must have already heard the news about the youth who was possessed by a spirit. So they had some kind of dibuk in the community recently. May the merciful one save us. That had left him on the second day of this past Rosh Hashanah, and he goes about in his own, like all other people. He seems to have had a cure. The implication, presumably, is that Shmelke was somehow involved, although it's not made explicit. May the God grant that this persist and that it be a lesson to the rebellious. And he goes on a little about saying that the other things related to the next holiday, so was Yom Kippur. He doesn't write details. Rosh Hashanah and so on. He mentioned Reb Aaron Levav, who his friend is also in contact with, and may have heard orally some of what transpired. Aaron Levav was again a very important functionary of the community of Nikolsburg. He ends up meeting with royalty at various points later on in his life. Part of an important family, the Levav Lemberg family. They were rabbis in Nikolsburg before Reb Shmelke, and they had generations of this family living there. So from you see, this is somebody. He sounds like some chassid talking about his Rebbe, right? He's really impressed. He's really finding this way of preaching, way of worship, extremely meaningful and important, and he's sharing it with his friends who also are very interested in hearing about it and participating in this. this is a really an expression of what was happening in the East with other Hasidic figures, and this is happening here in Nikolsburg in Moravia, the westernmost point at the time where Hasidism had spread. It's interesting that Reb Pinchas, who goes to Frankfurt, does not become a Rebbe. He does not function in this way. He's the rabbi of Frankfurt. He doesn't teach Hasidic ideas. He doesn't preach Hasidic ideas. He doesn't do these kinds of performances. He's there's no.
As I say, it's more yekka.
Well, you can say that, but he's not a yekka. He's from the same
right. Or the community is.
Ukraine. The community is, and he goes along with it for whatever reason. Maybe it was a personal. He wasn't known as this great pietist the way his brother knows. He was known as a great scholar. We have his writings. He wrote a very important work of homiletics, sermons, and we know. And you find some bits of Hasidic ideas there. It's not kind of pervasive the way it is with Shmelke. But we do find oral traditions from his earlier years where they mention, when he was in Vitkov or Lechovich, where you find local preachers quoting him more Hasidic style things about the elevating sparks and things like that. So when he was in the East, he did kind of seems to have transmitted these kinds of ideas. In the West, much less. He doesn't adopt the Sephardic liturgy the way Shmelke seems to have, even in Nikolsburg. I think he praised Sephardic himself, but the community doesn't, and he doesn't encourage it. In fact, he kind of discourages it. His own son doesn't pray Sephardic. He maintains the Ashkenazic rite. So it kind of played out very differently for the two brothers.
I mean, the obvious main difference is when Reb Shmelke passed away, which we must probably get to. Right.
Well, so that's it, right? So we have here Shmelke, teaching Hasidism in Nikolsburg, but he dies in 1778, just a very few years after he moves there. He's and very young. He's at 52, and he passes away, and we don't know what would have happened. We don't know what would have happened in Nikolsburg. We don't know what would have happened in the entire region, and even further west. Sure, there were a lot of other trends happening at the same time, but from descriptions we have, and that I read some of, he was clearly having an impact in Nikolsburg. Yeah.
Did he have any children that succeed his semi-Rebbe state?
No, they had children. They were rabbis in Western towns, more in Germany, I think. And we have some of their sermons as well, and it's not Hasidic at all. They do not seem to part of it. He was, he had a personal proclivity to this kind of life, and he's known as a great pietist and a Kabbalist, and many Hasidic leaders, their children were not necessarily so. That can be due to many factors. Geography is one, personality is another.
And it could also be it wasn't fully defined yet, then, that there's this blood succession.
Certainly was no succession. There was no that idea yet at all, and wouldn't have worked in this case. His son was a rabbi. He didn't have followers. He didn't have a reputation as a pietist. There was no question of somebody succeeding him as a Rebbe. To me, it's interesting to think whether you can see any influence in his children of Hasidic ideas. they may have been in yeshivas in the West his whole life and not have been in touch with him very much at all. I mean, in their formative years. So there are a lot of possibilities and a lot of ways it could play out. And in this case, it doesn't seem to have gone further than him, both in his family and in the location in Nikolsburg. But again, he was very respected. There were some controversies. Some people like to see it as an indication. Did we lose Baruch?
Before we get to any of the readings, when you think there's a pause place before we get to actually reading the letter with from 1772 or 3 response, then we'll take some questions if anyone.
Yeah. So I'm gonna finish talking about this and then we'll take a break. Yeah. So he there was some controversy over him, but a lot of it seems to have been political. Someone who also wanted to be rabbi was complaining about him, and then he was accused of bribery. And we have records of these backs and forths. And Maria Theresa, the empress, was involved in a number of these, and she was the one who reconfirmed him and vetoed the opposition. And explicitly cited his reputation as a very pious man for him remaining the rabbi of Nikolsburg. And then in that chronicle that I mentioned by the local Avram Trebish, it's called Korota Itim, published in 1801. He mentions his passing, and he mentions his like that. In that year, so this is 1778, I think I said, the brilliant scholar, the holy Kabbalist, the rabbi of the province, Shmelke, Levi Horowitz, passed away. One of Echad min HaMeshorerin, he was one of the singers, musicians. He had a reputation as being very musical. He would sing, so another aspect of his performance during prayer. He glorified God with his beautiful voice during prayers. He did wonders during his life in many matters, possibly referring to miracles. Definitely referring to miracles, not with incantations and practical Kabbalah, but with holy unification through his prayers. So just the saintliness alone brought about miracles. He would draw the heart of the congregation and brought it close to God, remove the foreskin of their hearts and the foreskin of their flesh. So he was a mohel as well. He served as a mohel of the community. Very much involved in the commandment of circumcision and sandikaot. That's sandik is the one that carries the child during the ceremony. So even if he wasn't the mohel, he would still be involved in the ceremony. And the day of his death, the very day he died, he was the sandik at 2 circumcisions. That's what it says. He had a brilliant mind. He gave all his money to charity, and he passed away on Tuesday, the Rosh Chodesh Iyar, on the 16th day of the Sfirat Omer, and he was buried the next day. Woe to us that the day has set, etc., etc. He was 52 years old, just like Samuel the prophet, and he entered the Garden of Eden. So again, this is somebody that he could have said the rabbi passed away, but he left an impression on the town. And you see again, it's just the multiple roles he's playing in the community, all at the same time. Which is very much characteristic of this new type of leader that was emerging, the Hasidic movement, really leading the community in this kind of holistic, engaged way. Okay, I'll take a break here. We can have questions if anyone has.
Hi, yeah. So, So, anyone has questions, just raise your hand, so to speak. Just very quickly, just practically. So, how many years was he actually in Nikolsburg altogether? Was it like 3-4 years?
Five. I guess he arrives in 1773, so it's 5
It's
years.
like a year, and wasn't there a delay possibly or something? Or
so he arrives in 1773. He's kind of nominated. He's voted in 1772, but he arrives in 1773. It seems.
Okay. All right.
So it's about 5 years.
Okay, great. I had a general question thing, but let's first hear from others. Is that Aaron? You had a question, or
he doesn't experience any opposition?
He does, but it seems most of it is political. It's not necessarily because of his affiliation with any Hasidic movement or anything like that. In fact, his piety seems to, they seems to be something that they value.
And I mean, I wonder even how much the brouhaha of 1772 actually made that the news made it, had as much of an effect. So being that it was farther from where the excommunications was emanating.
I mean, until he showed up, there was no Hasidic anything,
right,
as far as we know.
Or even what they may have known about the Hasidic.
Probably not very much.
Yossi, did you have something you wanted to ask? I know earlier you said it was answered already.
Yeah, my question was, did he earn a reputation as a miracle worker? And he answered. He said that's
okay.
What. Did he have any relationship with Rebbe Yitzchok?
Yes, he seems to have been. Yeah, Rebbe Yitzchok seems to have studied in his yeshiva.
And is it safe to say that Shmelke actually influenced Rebbe to visit the Maggid?
There are legends like that. It's definitely possible.
And particularly since it seems like Rebbe took over at some point the rabbinate of where Shmelke was.
I think for a while.
Succeeded him.
He was right.
You get the name.
Yes.
So they seem to have been for some linkage.
Yeah.
And
was he of the same kind of temperament? The Rebbe Yitzchok was known to be tolerant, always. Was he? Did they attribute that to him as well, or?
Maybe in some general sense. I don't know much more. We don't really have sense of people's personalities on that level.
You mean the whole like being a Sanegir for Yisrael?
Right, exactly.
I mean, Rebbe Yitzchok had that reputation, but I think there are some stories of Shmelke saying things positive about his fellow Jews. I don't know. At what point?
Right.
The Valdic. So right before we go to the letter, I hope that what I'm about to ask won't open up to have a long discussion, if there's a way to respond in a way that's compact as possible, and that is what made a chassid in the 1760s, especially with these elitists who had rabbinical positions or were traveling Maggidim. So the majority of their time they could not hang out in Mezritch or Ravna. So how did the migratory? I wonder if Martin Wojcicki goes into this in his atlas. Was the pshat that, let's say, someone in a far-flung place, let's say 100 miles away from Mezritch, someone, a Talmid Chacham, a scholar, hears and he's influenced by an Hasidic influencer, gets turned on to become a Chassid, and is self-inspired or persuaded to travel to Mezritch. And then he has his own intimate relationship and encounter and is then really ignited, gets to hang out there for a few weeks, let's say, then has to go back to Kollel or to be the Rav in the little shtetl where he is, but now has been born again, has new term chassid, self-identified as such, but doesn't necessarily is exposed to the Maggid in a continuous way.
No, I think it really varied. I think it could take different forms. There was no you didn't get a card issued saying you're now a member of any movement. There wasn't that kind of thing. It never was, and still isn't. Although I guess today there are some cases where you do get officially registered, sort of in the community. You pay your dues and so on. But especially in the early years, there's not necessarily a very clear conception of even of a movement necessarily. There's something happening. There's people trying to be pious, and they're getting excited about it. So I think a lot of it has to do with certain ideas that they learn and they find meaningful, and they try to implement in their lives. And a lot of it revolves around prayer. How to pray. A lot of it revolves around focusing on language, utterance, the act of uttering prayers was a fundamental aspect of pretty much everybody. The Maggid has its own kind of take on that, but it's something that the Besh talked about a great deal, and pretty much all other important Hasidic figures have some emphasis on praying with enthusiasm, with energy, and focusing on the power of speech.
Right.
Practicing piety in the old style and the new style, really putting emphasis on sincerity, on authenticity, on not fooling yourself, and trying to kind of live a pious life, but not live it in a kind of false way, because they recognize that it's easy to live a kind of false pious life. It's a big aspect of the new message, is that it's not enough to just act piously. It's the kind of internal work that has to happen, and a whole other range of ideas that they may have been exposed to and adopted one way or another.
Right. So that's certainly, let's say, ideas and personal work on inner transformation. Just that it also seems like for quite a few, the experience of the pilgrimage to the charismatic leader tzaddik seemed to have like really transformed them.
It's hard to say. I think there were plenty of people who came to the Maggid that weren't transformed.
And I'm saying, but still, well, right, correct. But I'm saying for the one who
the ritualization of the pilgrimage, I think, kind of happens a little later. I think people came to the Maggid and were impressed because they were impressed by these ideas. They were excited about the ideas, and obviously they were impressed by him as a saint, as a teacher, and they think. But this kind of ritualizing the pilgrimage as something you undertake because it's a Hasidic act, I don't think.
Okay, good. And also, well, certainly decades later with the takanas of the Yajna, things like that, you see it more, that there was a response to this.
Response also to people coming, also because they wanted to hear again. They wanted to hear teachings. They wanted to be part of the community. There was a community ready.
Right. Oh, okay. So now, how about you? Do you have time now? Would you like to read the letter of Shmelke?
Well, I'll talk a little bit about it.
Okay, so here we go. Again, set up the excommunication of the Misnagdim against the Chasidim was just published within that year, and now Elly's going to give us the context of this letter of Shmelke back to Vilna, which was the source of the excommunication.
Right. So we mentioned how he leaves Eastern Europe in 1772, just around the time when all this controversy is breaking out.
And by the way, the Maggid's passing is
around then as well, right? So we have this letter he wrote. He composed a kind of really an important defense of what's happening. Call it a movement already, whatever. It's a little tricky, but this Hasidic phenomenon that's happening, there's an opposition now, right? So that kind of defines it as something happening. Oh, if there's an opposition, then something exists. And he writes this letter to the community of Brody. Now, the community of Brody and you've heard about you in previous weeks about
right. And in fact, actually, I think I'm going to pull up from the atlas the map. We could show where Brody is on the map as you speak.
So Brody is really so he chooses to respond to the Brody to the community of Brody, not Vilna. He doesn't write to Vilna. He writes to Brody, and there's a reason for that. Now, Brody is really the largest community in all of Eastern Europe at the time, pretty much. I think it's the largest. Very famous, very important community, lots of scholars, probably a greater reputation for scholarship even than Vilna. And if you recall, the community of Vilna, when they get into this controversy with the Chasidim, they send out letters, and one of the most important communities they reach out to is Brody. They recruit the community leadership of Brody to their anti-Hasidic opposition. So
here is on the map, which is actually a 2-page map, but you could see if this is Mezritch, the Maggid, so Brody is not that far. It's actually more southwest. It's not up north in the Rice and Lithuanian area. Look how more north,
right?
Where in fact, like Vilna would be to the left of this, all the way up here. So it was and each glove would be somewhere like south of Vitebsk here, but still up north. So the communication between Brody and Vilna and Shklov that was going on was quite a trek. It wasn't.
But there seems to have been a lot of communication among these communities through north and west, certainly among the communal leaderships there were ways to get to communicate. So one of the main focus in the ban of the community. So the community of Brody joins kind of Vilna, and they issue their own ban, a local ban, and they basically what they proclaim is they forbid that the adoption of Kabbalistic customs and the Sephardic prayer rite, the liturgy, the Sephardic liturgy, except only people, and they're, they can only proclaim for their own community, and so they except for members of the Brody Klois. I don't know if you heard about it. The Brody Klois was a kind of institution of higher learning. It was supported by a kind of donor, a kind of what do you call it? An endowment. Where scholars sat and studied, basically, and the Brody Klois had a great reputation as this major center of learning, very the Chachmei Brod, wise men, second only to the Chachmei Chelm, and they were also Kabbalistic pietists. They studied Kabbalah, they prayed with the Sephardic rite. They are the old style Hasidim. They are the Hasidim that used to exist. These Kabbalistic pietists who were very common before the Hasidic movement. And they're limiting only bona fide Hasidim are allowed to adopt these kinds of practices. You have to be a member of this klois, and after over a certain age, and then you're allowed to be a pietist. And they're allowed to kind of act like a pietist, but nobody else. So that's how they express their opposition to what the Hasidic phenomenon.
Wait, is it true that Baal Shem Tov's brother-in-law, Rav Gershon Kittever, was part of the klois?
Could be. He was definitely connected to the klois. He knew people there. He was close to the Noida B'Yehuda and others. So he was there. I haven't found solid evidence that he was a member of the klois, but he was definitely connected to that community. And so Shmelke writes to them. He doesn't write to Vilna, he writes to Brody, and he criticizes this kind of distinction. That's a major point of the letter. how it's forbidding people to follow Kabbalistic customs and liturgy. And he says, what right you have to regulate piety? You don't. Anyone who wishes to serve God, should be allowed to do so as they see fit. What right do you, when it comes to your relationship with God, you're not breaking the law, you're not breaking halacha. What right does any community have to start making rules who's in and who's out and what you could or can't do in expressing your worship of God? So that's probably the most important and powerful claim, I think. And I think it gets to the heart, I think, of what was problematic about the way they reacted to the Hasidic movement. It's one thing to criticize, okay, there are people going beyond the pale, they're doing crazy things and communities need to control things, understood. To start legislating piety in this way, he found that very problematic.
And what about the fact that there was already restrictions against people studying Kabbalah until a certain age and being at a certain learned standard? So
you say obviously this is somebody, we're talking about people who know how to study a bit, and they make efforts to, they spend time studying all the time, every day. They're not just ignoramuses, they're not just people wasting their lives. They're people, serious people who want to be pious. So they're not part of the Chloes and Brody. So where does it say that that's a criteria for who's allowed to act piously and adopt what they feel they need in their spiritual life?
And just not to get ahead, unless you're going to describe a bit, but do you think that he's being a bit selective of defending, like does he go into the issues like the somersaulting, or
he doesn't talk about the negative things. He doesn't talk about the negative things. There's one sentence there, but I'm not sure if he's referring to them or he's referring to the negative things that the Vilna community is doing against the Chasidim. It's a little ambiguous. This language is not always easy to understand. Right? If you look at the Hebrew.
All right, I'm gonna share screen.
I don't know. I think it's
where is it on it, so we can
page 87.
Yes.
Yeah.
MS. Oh, so yeah, I see it there, where my cursor is.
Exactly. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I think he's referring to the Vilna community, but I don't know.
Or is it the fact that there's
or one way I
was separating, making their own minyanim?
Maybe, meaning people who are doing things that are a little extreme than whatever sins they have, but that shouldn't reflect on everybody else.
Right.
But I'm not sure what that means.
Yeah, it's just because last week when we were reading Alter Rebbe, in fact, as much as he's defending Hasidim, but also by accusing Avram Kalisker, he's in a way giving validity to a lot of the some, I should say, of the Misnagdim's claims. Like they say, every lie has a kernel of truth.
No, there was a lot of truth. I mean, there were people that were going around doing wild things. There's no doubt that was happening. And there's no doubt that they were also really undermining the kind of prestige of Torah scholars, of scholarship. Certainly in Lithuania, this was happening. And in Vilna, to the face of some of the most important prestigious rabbis that they had, so they were really upset about it, and maybe for good reason, whatever. But that's one of the things he says. He says you cannot make what right do you have to start making blanket statements about whole populations of Jews because you have some issues in your community. So again, right? He thinks they've gone way too far, and it's become personal, and they're not thinking straight. They're just labeling people as Hasidim, and then with this and painting them with the same brush, and this is completely false and problematic halachically, and that's something the Alter Rebbe also mentioned. You can't start accusing people of anything based on hearsay and without a proper kind of fact finding and a court of law, and that is what they were doing. So, and another thing he points out, right? Everyone who you want to serve God, you should be allowed to serve God as you see fit, as long as you're not doing anything against the law. And they themselves admit, right? They're not saying it's something wrong with these practices, but only people there's nothing wrong in principle, but you have to be at a certain level to start practicing it. So they don't really have a problem with it. They just have a problem. Oh, you can't do it. But not that it's not something wrong with it in principle, right? So all this argument, how could we adopt another liturgy? You're admitting you're allowed. Some people are allowed to. If some people are allowed to, then what right do you have to say who and who not? So it's not something in principle wrong. You're deciding who's allowed and who's not. So that's problematic.
And this seems to fit also the whole general erosion of a rabbinic control or community kahal control with the disbandment of the various committees of the Four Lands or others, like within that decade. So in general, there was being challenges to the status quo. So it almost it's Reb Shmelke being a rabbinic authority could ironically stand up to other authorities saying who elected you leader of this outfit,
Well, they were elected. These are the communal leaders of Brody.
So,
in fact, the rabbi of Brody didn't sign. It's interesting. The rabbi of Brody seems to have been not particularly against the Chasidim. It was he doesn't sign the chen. It's the kahal. Generally speaking, the kahal were the ones who had power. In these communities, they had the power to issue cheramim. It wasn't the rabbis who served at the will of the kahal. That is the way it was. The rabbis had very little political power and legislative power. They had a certain say in the community, and they had the power to decide halachic issues. But when it came to these kinds of communal issues, rabbis didn't necessarily have a whole lot of power. It was these rich families who controlled the community, and they were voted into office, and they had interests, and they had the power to issue excommunications and so on. And that so he is a rabbi, yes, replying to the community, but also he's addressing the community. The kahal is addressing the community council, but he's addressing the community as a whole as well, and the scholars who are part of the leadership in various capacities.
Yeah, I like his defense here. I'll put a share screen that, and if it is true that these Hasidim daven along and they're jumping all over the place.
Yeah, I'll get to that.
Okay, you're still.
I just was going to mention that, but yeah, he's saying yeah, but well, he says he defends a number of things. He defends the knives, the slaughtering knives. He says this is nonsense. It's obviously fine halachically. In fact, it's probably better. It's the people do it all the time in German in the West. You're just making up stories here. This is
right. As we explained a few weeks ago that the Maggid began institutionalizing a double-sided sharpening of the knife for the shechita, and there's some say it has to do with the invention of a new type of metal that was more resilient, but be it as it may, became a whole issue of halacha. Right.
And he was saying it's more about it's more economics. You have issues with the thing. You have your own problems in your community about who's controlling the slaughtering trade and blah 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 blah. And it's nothing to do with halacha. And he also criticizes the Kahal of Brody. He says, why are you just going along with the community of Vilna? You're the most important community. You have the reputation of these great scholars. You can't think for yourself. Why? Yeah. So he presses that button. Right. You have a larger, more prestigious community than Vilna. Why are you just relying on them and not thinking for yourself? They're clearly biased. They clearly have issues in their community. It's obviously personal, and then again he says you have no right to make these blanket statements about entire populations of Jews. That we're dealing with people who have dedicated their lives to in these harsh terms. And so they make weird gestures during their prayer. Since when is that against the law? I mean, that's your argument. So he really finds that ridiculous that would even be something to mention. It comes to worship, you do whatever it takes. You're not. It's not against you're not breaking any halachic principles by doing that. We have precedent in the Gemara for.
Hello?
Phasing out.
Phasing out. I don't know what's happening here. 1 second. You hear me okay?
Yeah, I hear you fine.
For some reason, he dropped. I hope he tunes back in. I'm not sure if it's because of my end that my bandwidth may be getting narrower this time of the month. I just hope he hopped to call back because he's giving us a good recap of that letter. Hi, Danny. Yes, I don't know if were you tuned in just now before a few minutes ago? Oh, okay, because we have a guest presenter who's been presenting the past hour and he somehow mysteriously just got bumped off.
No.
All right, so I hope he's able to call back in. Let me see if I could maybe even call him. So that was like he's giving a quite thorough lowdown about Reb Shmelke of Nikolsburg. And he's giving us the highlights of this defense of Chasidim, of this great Hasidic master teacher in response to the excommunications. Let me just try to call him. All right, hang on. I hope he picks up. Yeah, 1 second. You bumped off? Oh, okay. So just tune back in. Just call. Okay, great. Thanks. All right. So you heard that. He's just tuning back in. So we're really getting into the inner issues that had to do with the whole dynamic that was going on then. And in a way, it's connected to our days too, in the fact that even though there aren't formal opponents to Chasidim, so to speak. Some may say the New York Times lately is. That's a joke. But in fact, we learn through challenges, through antagonisms. That is how that's how we learn. That's how we become stronger, and it also forces us to define ourselves more, better. So in a way, this whole antagonism of Misnagdim in these early years of Hasidism almost helped the Hasidic movement flourish, and if anything, And this is one approach, perspective that historians have, and that is that these excommunications that we're dealing to of, let's say, 1772, or on even 1781 and 1790s, these actually the reason why there had to be a second and a third and multiple excommunications, because obviously it wasn't being fully effective. If it was effective, it would have been diminished. There would be no need for anyone. So what was going on? So it's almost like that whole interplay that you don't know what point to ignore an opposing beginnings of an opposing movement, saying, it's nothing, it's just a little thing, and it's just going to taper off on its own, and it won't exist anymore in a few months, a couple of years. And I mean, the other side is if we do start challenging it when it's really small, then we can actually build it up, right? So Hasidism was in this during here in the early 1770s, was in this semi-nascent zone where there was already enough of a critical mass to begin calling it a movement and having leaders. I mean, not only disciples of a leader, but those disciples themselves becoming their own mini leaders all over, spreading through the Pale Settlement. And I do want to thank the one who got me this amazing historical atlas, which I'm going to show you the cover. This is a PDF of it. It's in hard copy. It's not that expensive for a beautiful illuminated. Wait, hang on. Elly's calling me. 1 second. Hello? Are you? Because it's not showing. Because you come on and then you pop off. Let's try one more time. Okay, I'll stay on if you want. Yeah, somehow he's trying to get in, but it's been popping up. Because what happens is I see your name come up for like a split second, and before I could click you in, oh, there you are. Okay, now you're in. Okay, here we go back. So fantastic. Welcome back, Elly. So we were just talking about how this is the time when it's really emerging from the 1760s as coalescing into a movement into the 1770s, and that this amazing atlas by Martin Brzezinski gives a very, I was just going to show the cover so people could see it, and if you want to find it yourselves. Historical Atlas of Hasidism, Martin Brzezinski, Polish, actually not Jewish, by the way, but an amazing fellow. And if anyone who follows the Polish Tish of Gabriela and Miriam, he's been on at least once, if not twice. Jonathan, you may remember if he was on more than once, but I remember he was for sure on at least one. And
I know he was on at least once.
Right.
No, he's definitely been on more than once. Sure.
Right. Yes. Okay. Published by Princeton and Oxford University Presses, mainly Princeton, it seems. So I highly recommend it. It's the best visually, not only just visually attractive, but data based. He's collected the most information on the multiple Hasidic courts and created a list of over 1,000 Rebbes, if I recall, and able to chart and map it out, give us a whole.
Yes, up until the present.
Until the end, it's until the present.
Very much,
So you'll find
Borough Park and
right, and Israel area is correct. So it's amazing work. So what we're covering is how it all began, and here we are with Rebbe Shmelke, his letter of defense to the Chasidim. So what other additional aspects?
That was most of that's basically that basically covers it actually. Let people be pious, and community should not legislate how somebody chooses to express their piety. And I think that was his main argument, and that this kind of criticism of the Hasidim as a whole is misguided and based on a lot of personal issues that the Vilna community has to deal with on their own community, and has nothing to do with others. And in fact, he encourages them to write to Vilna and admonish them and tell them they should shape up and get their act together. And this is not how you deal with your problems. But it's a really impassioned defense of the Hasidic movement. He uses some sharp language. He also he's speaking from a position of authority. He's speaking from a position of authority, and he's a well-respected rabbinic authority throughout. He's respected throughout Eastern Europe. Now, we don't know what effect this letter had. We don't have any direct reactions to it, but it stands to reason that it had some effect, given his reputation and so on. Even the Misnagdim respected the two brothers. They David of Makov, the Maggid, David of Makov, who wrote quite a bit. One of the main anti-Hasidic writers. A couple of times he mentions Shmelke and Pinchas, and he takes pains to say that his criticism of the Chasidim, of course, do not apply to them. They are beyond reproach. They're of course the greatest scholars and pious rabbis and so on and so forth. But the Hasidim are just kind of using them and including them in their movement, and they're not part of the movement. They're just using their names to kind of make themselves seem legitimate, and they have nothing in common. There's nothing in common between these people who are just partying all day and singing songs, and these saintly pietists and rabbis and so on. So yeah, that's about all I have to share on the letter. There's actually, how about I actually have before, I forgot about this. There's a little snippet of it translated into English in this book here. It's actually a book of translations of primary Hasidic texts, a recent collection, and you can find some nice things in it. And it has a translation of a paragraph out of this letter. So I'll read that, and then we can end with that. So anyone who wishes to make himself a scholar may do so. Or make himself, meaning act like a scholar. And this is based on the passage in the Talmud. One who sits and studies, who has a facility for and reputation in the study of Talmud, Rashi, and Tosfos, meaning he's a scholar, he knows he's educated, and he setting aside time for study whenever he can. And this includes those who fear God, even though they are not widely esteemed, meaning they're not part of the clothes of Brody, they're not part of any fancy institution of pietists, but they're just scholarly, serious people. Such a one is given permission to worship God in the service of the heart. That means with prayer, with all his might, accepting all of the possible stringencies in matters of clothing. He can dress as he wishes, referring to certain clothing that the Hasidim would wear, silk, and so on.
And white on
Shabbos, exactly. White on Shabbos, exactly. So when they mention that in the Brody proclamation, or the offering he brings in the house of God, and this is referring to what nusach, what liturgical kind of tradition he follows. One does more, another does less, but both are praiseworthy as long as their heart is directed to heaven. What matters here is what people's intentions are and not exactly how they act. This obsession with exactly whether people are acting one way or the other is wrong. These pious actions are accepted as pleasing aroma before God's glory. The truth is, as they have said, who knows how to distinguish between different people? This is a verse from Ecclesiastes. Creating boundaries above, differentiating between a famous scholar and someone unknown, Oh, so you're famous, so now you can wear white on Shabbos. You're not famous, no, you're not allowed to wear white on Shabbos. Between a youth and an elder, oh, you're this, oh, you reached this birthday, okay, now you can wear. So he finds that completely baseless. God is close to the brokenhearted and will deliver those of crushed spirit without distinction. God doesn't care how old you are or whether you have any fame as a pietist or whether you are a member of the Klois of Brody. That's irrelevant. So with that, I think I can end. But you can go on for hours. I know. Yes, I can hear you. You're muted.
I was just saying, just as you finished, Levi tunes in.
Levi.
Welcome. So thank you so much.
That's yes.
Right. So really, thank you so much. It feels like we got, what was 15. We got like the bonus was more than the base, of both context, information, and insight, of both the personality of Reb Shmelke, his ways of teaching, and it's particularly related to certainly how he's defending the Chasidim and identifying as such. So it feels like we got as much as we can out of the letters. I don't think, unless you feel like needing to read any of the original Hebrew, I'm fine having covered what we did. And I see that there is a hand, at least one up for so we'll take a question or two.
Sure.
And then we'll go on to more Farbrengen, Parsha, Yud Shvat / Tu BiShvat stuff and all that stuff. Right. So Yossi.
Yeah. What's up?
What's up? Hey.
The question was, so the community of Brady, are they aware, or is the Vilna Gaon's actual signing, or what is it, an actual letter? Are they aware of it?
The one, I don't think he actually signed. I don't remember. Did he sign it? No, later on in the 90s, he signs.
His name does.
His name is. But he doesn't sign it.
I think at least in the copy we have, his name is included, which his name
is mentioned in the body of these letters and things, but I don't think he.
Let's see how it is right here.
I have it.
I'm just going to pull it up. It seems like, right, we don't have a copy of the original, but it's published as if he was one of 15 or whatever signatures.
Really? Which one?
Wait. Oh.
No, I don't think so. First of all, the one in Zamir Aritzim does not have.
Does not have, huh?
Does not have. Let's see.
Maybe you're right.
No, I don't think his name is.
He doesn't sign.
He doesn't sign. They mention him, and he's obviously behind it, but he does not.
Okay.
He doesn't have an official position. He doesn't have an official position in the.
Look at Ksav Dalet. Ksav Dalet at the end.
Okay.
Okay. So Ksav, which is this was actually, I think, to was this the one to Brisk or a more general one? And this one does have his name included with the Parnasim. He's here on the top, the upper left, Elly Moseson.
So this is Brisk, who are copying things they got from Brisk, from Vilna. Sorry.
That was sent from Vilna to Brisk.
Yeah, to Brisk,
which
and then Brisk is sending it to Brody.
Or something like that.
Anyways, this is all. So where do you see?
But on page.
Shmuch Elio Ben.
Yeah.
So I guess that may be him. Yeah.
So
not sure though. Not sure though.
Well, anyway, they are left with the impression that the Vilna Gaon is not against it, and he's probably for it, and so that might explain. I mean, his word is, God's word, so to speak.
No, why would? But that's part of what Shmelke is telling them is like, why you're just as pretty, you're more prestigious than Vilna, you're a larger community, you have
including the
greater
guy.
reputation. Going is one person. This is and they're independent. He's telling them, why are you just going along? Because of
I was under the impression the Vilna Gaon was like the head Litvak, the ultimate.
He had a reputation as being a great scholar, but that doesn't mean his word is God. No. And look, it had an effect. They did go along with it, but the Shmelke is saying,
right,
hold on a second. Why are you just following them? You're
right.
an independent community, and you have all the right and all the scholarship and all to be independent.
Right.
And this last guy who said, oh, with the exception of Reb Shmelke, his thing is, was he not also wasn't one of the things that they were it wasn't just the impiety and the what's it called, the what is it, like infringement of halacha, but the philosophy, weren't they opposed? Didn't they have their own didn't they think it to be heretical, or the entire, no?
What you mean, Hasidic ideas and so on?
Yes, Hasidic ideas, and just
it's complicated. So the Vilna Gaon mentions that he read some Hasidic writings and he thinks it's heretical, but it kind of seems to be after the fact, meaning there's already controversy. People are upset about how Chasidim are behaving and so on. So they're reading these texts and they're finding things that they find problematic. It's not emphasized, and certainly in the earliest documents, there's no mention of any particular ideas. There's no specific idea, a Hasidic idea that it's all about practices. They speak during prayer, they make gestures, they use these knives, they make fun of scholars. Well, it's all, there's no ideology that as such that is criticized.
At least until later.
Yes. So later there's a little more, and that has to do with, a lot of it has to do with the publication of Hasidic writings and the dissemination. And now so they're going through, they're reading the Hasidic writings, they're going to find stuff that they're not happy about. That's going to confirm, all the terrible things they already believe about Hasidim. But it wasn't that, we have problems with your theology and therefore we have issues. It was not about theology.
Oh, okay. I was under that impression. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Yossi, too. Yossi, I'm so glad you got to meet Elly and rapport. Yossi is very engaged in these areas of study, but not only historical, but also more the history of ideas. That's why Yossi's asking so much in that area, and we've discussed in the past quite a bit on the more theological nuances,
so
immanence of Hashem and all that. So that's why it's probably you're trying to find, even in this early period, something like that.
But I wonder, though, if it's just halachic infringement, then I mean, as far as I know, the Rambam says that outside of someone being a heretic, if someone, even if, what's this cause of excommunication? Where do they have this precedent that let's excommunicate someone who's just falling out of line because they're not exactly?
You're asking a very good question, but as I was saying before, excommunication was a political tool. Used by the Kahal, not the rabbis necessarily. The rabbis couldn't issue excommunication on their own. They always needed the backing of the Kahal, and the Kahal used it as a political tool, as a way of coercion and threat to keep a certain stability in the community. However they saw fit, and the Kahal does not base their decisions solely on halacha. The halacha is an important factor, but they also base it on their practical needs of running a community, and it's not just you shouldn't just dismiss it, because it's a serious thing. They had to. It's a great responsibility, and you have to make sure you're acting in a certain way, the community is behaving in a certain way, not being stable, not having a stable relationship with the secular government, with which is basically who is allowing them to live there and practice their religion, and anything that was seen as possibly undermining that stability was a direct threat to the entire community and to their well-being and their some of the accusations shouldn't be completely dismissed. The idea that now we seem to have a new form of Judaism is a threat to all Jews in these lands, because they had a very technical legal status, and that if that is undermined in some way, it could have major consequences for Jews. So yes, in Vilna there's a lot of bad blood and things like that, but there was also a serious concern. It shouldn't be completely that you can't really completely dismiss, and the Kahal is responsible for that. So using Lecherim to kind of rein in elements that undermine the stability of the community was seen in their eyes as legitimate. Again, so then you have the arguments that they're putting forth, and then you have the counter arguments, and how much was it really a threat, and how much was it just their own personal issues in their own community that they could have dealt with in other ways. But the idea that the Kahal could issue excommunication against people who are undermining the authority of the Kahal and the stability of a local community was pretty standard and acceptable and understandable for Jews in that period.
It's interesting because we think of like Spinoza was put in the excommunication, Isaac Costa, that these were like rare events, but the way you're describing it is that it
wasn't so common, but it was a real and ever-present possibility. By the way, in the case of Spinoza, it wasn't the rabbis who issued; it was the Kahal, it was the community that issued the excommunication. It's not the rabbis.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, the writ of the cherem seems to have been signed.
The rabbis were involved, but the authority to issue the cherem was held by the Kahal.
Cool. Yeah, and then there's other streams in that also. Some say that Vilna's direct attack on Hasidim must have to do with internal politics between the rabbi and the Kahal, and maybe even financial issues between them. So many a times it's like there's more than one reason or cause to major historical events.
Always.
Like it's the famously Gibbons, right? The fall of fall and decline of the Roman Empire.
Yes.
And trying to find the reasons for it, and it's not one over another, but it's rather the
right. It's a bunch of things, and we never know what the most we can do is try to get as much facts about the context as possible to get a sense of what might have been playing a role. But you can't pinpoint causes when you're dealing with historical phenomena.
Right.
Baruch pointed out in the past, Baruch, is that there were
contributing factors. Yes. Well, I'm sorry.
There were these also counter cherems on the side of the Hasidim as well, right? Baruch, you mentioned
that the Hasidim made a counter that they attempted to. That there were some like Shlomo Karliner and some others that allegedly wanted to, but the Maggid himself allegedly was against it. I'm not sure if there was any formal from Chasidim against Misnagdim. There were decades later within Chasidim, between like Tzanz and Ruzhin, there was excommunication in Israel against the Tzanz Rebbe, but otherwise I don't know. Do you know of any that the Chasidim created an actual formal
No, in this period, no. There was no,
This
there was
period.
no counter.
I mean, there were certain issues that they accused each other, such as
Part of it was like I was just saying, they weren't a community. They were individuals spread out
spread out, right?
A kahal issues, not a group of individuals.
Which is interesting because, well, if assuming that a lot of these students in the Maggid were themselves rabbis, so even if they didn't have a certain communal support,
they could have issued a rabbinic one, but it had no political power. Would have had no political power.
And it seems like even the kahal didn't have major political power.
Very, very much in decline, the power of the
right, which is that therefore obviously why they needed to make a second.
Even in Vilna, they couldn't really accomplish a whole lot.
Right,
the Hasidim didn't.
So,
they never got rid of the Hasidim in Vilna in their own towns.
Elly, one other question, and this is sort of beside the point. I wonder, do you know to whom is it attributed that the Chassid worships God and the Misnagdim it worships the Shulchan Aruch?
I don't remember that one.
Supposedly an early source, but okay.
I don't think it's in any very early source, but I could be wrong.
Well, that's the stereotype.
There are similar, there are various kind of statements and teachings with that sentiment, but I don't know where the original source of that particular one.
Right. Gewalt. Sweet. So thank you again, Elly, Chaim Eliyahu, over and over for really fleshing it out. And there's so much more we can cover. Just feeling that that till the we in Hasidic mode we could stretch time, right? We could go till after the Zman, so to speak, here.
And we already did that.
We already did.
It can go on. I know it can, and then from personal experience, and it would be wonderful. But
right. So like as they say, all good things come to at least a pause, if not an end. So Mish, thank you very much for enlightening us in this, and this also reminded me of the fact that some Hasidic masters made it all the way out to Moravia or even Germany. What my father would say: what do you get when you cross a Chassid and a Yeke? Is someone who's always exactly a half hour late.
Yes.
Okay.
We know people we all know people like that.
I will say you have stuff written on academia, right?
Right.
A little bit, a little bit.
More than
I don't know. Actually, maybe Baruch can send you if
I have a few actually. You sent me. You one on dream consciousness.
Cool. I would love it.
Some of them are not really up there.
The one thing that caught my eye was something about the lips of a Gentile or something.
Prayer.
That's not. That's a talk I'm going to give in a couple of weeks.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Whereabouts?
Colombia. So I mentioned it.
Great. Yes. All right. And if anyone wants to follow up, you could get through me in touch with Elly, or if you do want to share in the chat.
I can give my email address.
And if you don't mind if I talk for you, just a little bit of your specific areas of specialty, which has to do with areas of what one would call at times what would you call it, practical Kabbalah aspects?
I wouldn't use the term practical. I don't like
what would you use? Magical Kabbalah? Magic, Jewish magic from early medieval all the way through the Hasidic movement.
I've been focusing mostly on Eastern Europe and Eastern Europe period, but
awesome.
And Elly's shared with me over the years, and even more recently, amazing unpublished materials in this area. And there's a lot more of these almost like magical manuals and healing ways, recipes, you could call them, or instructions, segulot, amulets, all areas, even right? Elly showed creating like a doll where you reenact certain areas to heal someone, almost like an voodoo.
Using kind of voodoo like stuff and offerings to different spirit powers.
And,
Wow.
Great. Fantastic.
Kaplan mentions a manuscript of one thing where someone that there's the incantation on fishing, things like fishing and how to get.
Yes, you have fishing. Some of it are magical. Some are just good at attracting fish. So the boundaries between science, magic is not very, and just common sense is not very clear. So they're all mixed together. You can have one thing that's kind of herbal, and another thing that's completely magical, another thing that's just practical and sort of scientific, and there's no real distinction. It's all mixed together, and it's kind of viewed very similarly as well.
Cool. So we're looking forward to when their actual recipes published. It's very popular these days, like alternative medicines, new herbal ways.
I wouldn't recommend. I wouldn't recommend trying that.
Eastern European remedies.
There was that, herbs. There was that book. Yeah,
actually, there was someone on earlier here that is who's looked into it in the past and had some books on the subject. If she comes back, someone who was here earlier, so we'll see.
Yeah. No, I mean, these are traditions. I wouldn't. I don't know. If you have a fever, I wouldn't recommend using.
I hear. Right. Not.
No.
So you don't want to spread.
I do not want to. I mean, I want to spread knowledge about it because I think it's a very fascinating, and also gives you a lot of insight into. To human beings and right and how they think and react to life and situations, and there's a lot of insight you can get from that, and it's also interesting historically and mythologically, religiously, so it's I think a very rich tradition, and I would say another thing. You deal with history, and Jewish history especially, you have very little to go on other than texts, and texts that are written by a very small percentage of the population, a very elite strata of the population who have very specific ideas of what they think people should be doing and so on. We don't know what life was like for the average person, and it's very hard to get that knowledge from most of the sources that are generally used. But from these types of sources, from these magical sources, you're much closer. Again, it's people who are literate. It's usually rabbis are writing it down, but they're including oral traditions of ordinary people, practices practiced by ordinary people in their day-to-day existence, trying to deal with the hardships of life. You have also a much stronger presence of women, which you're not going to find pretty much in any other genre in the Jewish tradition. Women were highly active in these traditions, transmitters, practitioners of magic, and it's a window into what life was like for ordinary people, what they were actually doing in many cases to deal with the challenges of life. So I think it's an important and really fascinating resource for understanding history.
Cool. So he's making, so Yossi says in the chat, well, that's in the line with Rambam's view, LOL. So, right.
Not entirely, but sure.
Well, that's the LOL part. Oh, you mean,
right.
Actually, he was into some of it, just based on him as a doctor, maybe. having
No, the
relationship.
Rambam was very dismissive of all of that. But he
Right,
was
right.
a very lone voice in the Jewish
Right, but-
tradition. Very,
True, but-
very lone.
Many times with a lot of these things, he would say this is only for women and children, so to speak. But that was his.
That's what you meant. I
Right,
see.
yeah.
No, but it wasn't only women and children. It was the greatest rabbis and scholars who were also engaged in these things. It wasn't.
Wow.
It wasn't.
So I how's that?
I mean, the Baal Shem Tov was a Baal Shem. I don't know if you,
Right,
you
of
mentioned
course.
that, but
Right.
first and foremost, that's what he
Right.
was busy with most of his time.
Right. It was only until recently that I understood that the Baal Shem, the word Baal Shem doesn't mean that he has a good name in the community, so to speak. It's that he deals with amulets, right? That was the
Baal Shem, yes. I think it also has that connotation. I mean, people understood it, meaning a person who has gained a reputation as a magician. But yes, it means Baal Shem, a master of the name of God.
And in fact, I think there's one anecdote that there were those that saw it as beneath the status of the Baal Shem Tov to call him just the Baal Shem, like
Yes.
it was right that
Well, because
somehow
the Baal
he-
Shem was not necessarily someone who was a major saint. It was somebody who had this kind of magical knowledge and expertise. It wasn't
Yeah.
necessarily somebody who was pious and saintly and so on. Although they often were.
And just to note, just for everyone who knows, I hope you don't mind me, Elly, sharing that you've discovered multiple of these magic or segulot attributed to the Baal Shem Tov himself in manuscripts that have not been published yet. So you're also there in that way, in other ways, actually bringing into the fore heretofore unknown materials relating to the Baal Shem Tov. So,
Yeah, it was assumed that he didn't transmit this. He has teachings about pietism and mysticism, but he also had shared his knowledge of magic to some degree, at least.
mhm.
And that still, to some degree, still survives in these
Right.
magical manuscripts.
And
And
so
not only him, but also pretty much every famous Rebbe that you know, pretty much every single one, there are traditions and manuscripts and other sources of magical rituals and practices attributed to them. So Rebbes didn't just give blessings; they also gave magical recommendations or performed magical rituals.
or amulets, as we said, right?
Yeah, but not only amulets. Yes, amulets were very common, but other things as well. Lead pouring and wax pouring and these voodoo rituals.
And now you're talking. We want to get the materials. You want to get the gold here. So hopefully we'll there.
Didn't they even attribute to one of the Baal Shem Tov making a golem or something? One of the
earlier
Yes,
about
yes,
something. Rebbe
earlier,
Eliyahu,
yes,
right?
sure.
I think Rebbe Eliyahu.
Yes, yes.
He was supposedly the grandfather of the Chacham Tzvi, or great grandfather.
Yes.
Mhm.
And Yaakov Emden was there for the great grandson or something.
Yeah.
It's part of the family business. So there's some there's a legend that the Vilna Gaon himself, when he was a child, I think, attempted to make.
Yes, that's what they.
Oh wow, interesting.
Yes.
And so it was. Yeah. It
Yeah, me
seems-
too. We're not just me too. I also tried. Not just the
Or
Vilna
have-
Gaon. I mean, it's not very hard to try.
It's right.
He tried to make a golem. Oh, okay.
Yeah. It takes a certain amount of faith to even try to make a golem.
I guess so.
All
Yeah.
right. Okay. So next golem workshop.
Yes.
We'll
Well,
meet
okay.
out of Paraguay.
We'll be back once you've resolved the whole Chasidim Misnagdim thing. Then we'll have.
And then we're gonna cover the. You're right. We're gonna do that DIY golem. All right. So Sammy shared that. Thank you once again, Mamish. Thank you again, Elly. And and we have Levi back. Welcome. And so this is a perfect time if we want to get a little bit more into Farbrengen mode, sharing mode. If any, it is Yud Shvat. It is also warm up for Tu BiShvat. And again, to mention, I mentioned earlier, mentioning it again, that Atika Kadisha, together with Nitzotzot, we're having an incredibly curated Tu BiShvat Seder song circle in the height of the heights of Crown Heights. We've had a magical song circle for Zeis Chanukah in this space on St. John's. Let me see if I can find a way to even share it on the screen.
Okay, I'll leave you guys though.
Okay, Elly, again,
all hours.
Fantastic.
Great
and
to see you all.
to begin, hopefully, when there's any more good opportunity for you to tune in,
sure,
maybe to even show some of that magic stuff at some point. Let's see.
All right.
Really incredible. And to more and more, and as I say, this is just part of a longer trajectory of time to reporting together. Okay.
Yes. Many years.
Take care, yes. Bye. Okay. So that is. So that was Rebbe Eliyahu. So okay. So we left there. With the Maggid, and with Rebbe Shmelke, we were focusing on that, and there's the link also with this time of year. Actually, last week I forgot to mention that last Wednesday was the Yartzeit of the Baba Sali. So I apologize, dear Baba Sali, I didn't mention you in time. But what can you do? We're Hasidim around here. Sometimes it takes time to get to it. And in fact, the Baba Sali had connections with the Lubavitcher Rebbe in different ways. And I had connections with members of the Baba Sali's family of Chatzera. Sarah. So may his Tzidkis, may his righteousness continue. And as we'll see, hopefully next week in other places, that the Sephardim for a good time were the ones that were actually defending the Chasidim. Wait, hang on. Let's see what's going on here. So there is this trajectory, and as we mentioned earlier, that tonight is the Yartzeit of the 6th Lubavitcher Rebbe, Yosef Yitzchok, and the coronation of the last, or our Lubavitcher Rebbe, as we say. So we've been delving earlier about more the origins of the Hasidic movement, and then we have this auspicious time tonight, which is related more to our times of the Hasidic movement. And there is this linkage of the first and the last, or more specifically, as the Rebbe, late Lubavitcher Rebbe, puts in his first Maimer, first Hasidic discourse that he said when he first became Rebbe, which is Basi, Legani, I came to my garden, where he says that we are the 7th generation from the Alter Rebbe, the first Rebbe of Chabad. And we know that the number 7 is very special, right? It's not just on the crap floor, meaning, let's say in gambling, where you say, oh, lucky 7. No, this is actually coming from Torah, that Kol Hashivin Chavivin, all 7s are beloved, 7 generations, even from Abraham to Moshe to Moses, and other ways. This Shabbos is the 7th day of the week, and many places you see how 7 is a beloved. It's not just a lucky number 7, but it's a beloved number 7, cherished number 7. Chavivin. And now the thing is, the way, it's also in Sphira, like Malchut from Chesed is number 7 too. But the way that what makes it special is by being 7, meaning that there were 6 beforehand. So you have to give props to the first, the trailblazers, the innovators, the ones who began from nothing to something. From like Abraham, Echad Haba Abraham, it says one, not only he was one, he was the first. That's what makes him so special and why we're all called after him in some way. And it's true, Moshe was the one who brought fully, led us and guided us to its fullest expression with what we're dealing now. We see it with Exodus and with Right Seas Mitzrayim, and then to Matan Torah, that will be next week. The giving the Torah, but at the same time, it is all cumulative and based on what was happening until that point. So there was a first, then a second, then a third, and a fourth, till there's a 7th. So of the 6 before the 7th, the first is the most important, because without it, nothing would have been done. So, so therefore, in the Rebbe, who's the 7th in the succession from the Alter Rebbe, said, yes, our generation is so almost gifted in a way to be so special by being the 7th, but the only way that you're entitled to that specialness of being 7 is by having the humility and recognition that there was a first that preceded, and to give respect to that first, almost like us giving respect to our elders. And in the Native American ways, they also speak about 7 generations. I'm sure some of us here have certain laundry detergent products called 7th generation. I don't think they read the Medrash or Kabbalah on it. I think, it's coming from, there is an almost universal understanding that 7th generation is a solid, permanent way of something enduring. So there we are. We're in the 7th in that way, and at the same time, and that's what Yud Shvat represents, going into the 7th, and again, but still revering the first, right? And in that way too, even farther up the time, like backwards, the timeline from the Alter Rebbe, two generations before him was the founding of the whole movement to begin with the Baal Shem Tov, though academics would say, I don't know if you could call Mamish the Baal Shem Tov, he was the creation thereof. I could say more during the Maggid call that more, as we're seeing, be it as it may, certainly Baal Shem Tov was the first Chassid and first Rebbe, and so if we come from the Baal Shem Tov till the last Rebbe, it would be 9 generations. So we get 2 extra. In that respect, if you would look at it from the Sephirotic scheme, so you could say there's that and that we or something post the 9th is the 10th, representing all the 10th Sphira. Whatever way you want to look, there's also something special about 10 generations, right? We see in Chumash and in Pirkei Avot that speaks about the 10 generations from Adam to Noach, or from Noach to Abraham. So that is in itself a whole epochal time unit span, right? Showing something really last. We also speak, there's longer trajectories, like 40 generations, right? What is it from Adam to Rosh, or all the way down? So the point is that we are by this Hasidic movement keeps on moving. That's why it's a movement. It's been always in motion, always evolving. And as let me just show a little bit. Actually, this fascinating. I'm so happy I got this atlas finally, PDF, and I could show it to you everyone here, and as Elly Moseson pointed out, it even has maps of contemporary Hasidim. Like we could even skip that, and also beautifully reproduced pictures. Some of them I've seen the pictures before, but not so sharp. And look at these. Communal, Sonnenberg was a famous millionaire, one of the wealthiest people in Poland. She helped finance several of the courts, Hasidic courts, for example. Look at this map. Socioeconomic status of Hasidic groups, 1900 to 1939. And you see on this map, Ger, Alexander, Chekhanov, Nesvit, Zlochev, Chechanovka. And by the way, there's certain dynasties that were really big at the time, but are extinct now. Like this one here, Trinsk. Trisk. What was the other one I'm thinking of? Like Makiv. I'm trying. Let me see if I can find it. Charchkov here doesn't really exist anymore either, even though it's related to Ruzhin and Kopichnitz. These were big ones. Look how big Ger is. All right, just giving you an example of just how the flourishment of the Hasidic movement that goes on and on. And probably in 50 years, there'll be an expanded edition of this book. You know what I mean? Let's see what other interesting maps we have here. So you know what? Actually, maybe we could find a map, something related to the persons to what we're relating with Yud Shvat, the Yartzeit. Like here, hierarchy of Hasidic groups as measured by the number of shtiblach. So Professor Vajinsky went through the actual data to find how many of these small shows there were, graphed it out. Look there, this is Lubavitch, right? That's small. Look, the biggest here is Vizhnitz, followed by Sigit, followed by Sminka, you know, different areas. So this is of the Belarus here, this region, the northeast of the Lithuania, Belarus, well, what's known as Rysin. In this time, the early 20th century, you see how much Lubavitch, 32%. The next biggest is Karlinstone, 10%, Slonin, 10%. And Kadanayev is 7%. Kadanayev, there was the most that was open to Lubavitch. There was some Kadanayev Chassidim that wound up in Lubavitch. Kabrin, Kaputz was also a Chabad movement. Kaputz, as was Ladi, as was Strescheller. So these could be included with Lubavitch if you want to say Chabad, up to 40% of that area. And this is the time of the 5th and 6th Lubavitch Rebbe's, including this being the 6th one is the one whose Yartzeit is today. And then, of course, more south in Ukraine, you see Lubavitch is much smaller, only 4%, whereas Trisk, or Sali, or even Karlin's Letter is bigger. Of Makra, that's the one that doesn't exist anymore, that actually with time got even bigger. You see this. So here's the story. Let's say Lubavitch or Rysin, which were associated with more the north in Russia, but still they had a minority of Hasidim more south in Ukraine or Volhynia, right? And other places like that. So it wasn't just in, the Hasidim certainly began in certain shtetls and regions, but they were able to spread. There were Chabad Hasidim early on, even from the first, second generations, all the way in Romania, in Yasi, for example. Or there was even one or two that were even, as we met, like major. Look at this. Influence areas of the major Hasidic dynasties, 1900, 1939, meaning even going more west. Okay, so let's see, Chabad, Okay, that's light blue here. That's all the way up here northeast. They're almost like I don't want to be too corny, it's almost like the Eskimos of Chasidim, all the way up in the Arctic Circle, so to speak. And even Vilna was more Slonim or Stalin. What's the pink? Sans. Carlin and Sans. Carlin is actually all this. So you get a color mapped spread. Now, with Rabbi Yosef Yitzchok, even though Lubavitch, again, was all the way up north, what happened was, during the Soviet, when he became Rebbe in 1920, I'm just scrolling down so you get some visual. Like, here's Lubavitch. Okay, so Lubavitch is all the way northeast, next to Ladi. That is where the first Chabad Rebbe was. It's from the second Chabad Rebbe that they moved to Lubavitch, and when Chabad became almost more or less synonymous with Lubavitch. Papus was another one, but they're all in this area. You see how Vitebsk is nearby, more north. Maggid, Babroisk was another Chabad location. Shklov was not too far from this area. Then look, you want to go to like Chernobyl, I'm not sure the famous Chernobyl dynasty, you have to go a couple hundred miles down, at least. Down into, so you're basically going to what is these days like northeast Belarus, and you have to go down to, like, we know where the nuclear area is, right? That's in North Ukraine, and it's not around the corner. So the northern Hasidim, let's call them, which include Chabad, from it, were in a way quite distant from the areas where Hasidism actually began developing down more south. So it trickled up influence from the south. That was the general direction of the spread of Hasidus, from the south or south central or central in the center, south in the center. Or let me see if this map could give us a little better. Yeah, you see here Romania, Yasti, that's part of Kishinev, that's Moldavia. Say Hasidus started in this area, then it really took off, of course, right, grabbed hold in the areas over here, what they called Great Poland, Big Poland, Small Poland, and Poland, this red bluish area, and only later did it spread out more north. And when we'll continue down the history, we'll also show how not only how it spread, but let's someone in, but how why that made a difference, and why there was these clusters of even students of the Maggid. And that like there's a reason why the Alter Rebbe was close to Vitebsk, because they were what we call in modern Yiddish parlance, they were Landsman. They were from the same area. They weren't Ukrainian from the south, Ukrainians or Volhynias or whatever, or even from the northwest, the more Lithuanian regions, Western Lithuanian. They were more the northeast, near the Russian border, and so they had this mutual understanding. Here is a map atlas already later in the early 1900s. Hasidim in America, like Anshe Sfard synagogues, was almost code word a bit for a Hasidic show, because why are you an Ashkenazi davening Nusach Sfard? Must be. I mean, it was more often than not, it was because you were a Chassid. Right? If you weren't Sephardic, right? That's how it's right. Here, look at here. This is a map of, again, circa 1900, Chicago. Anshe Sfard, first Romanian. Kehillat Hasfardim. Anshe Lubavitch. These are synagogues near the Loop, near West Side Chicago. Here, Philly. Nazin Nusach Anshe Nazin, that was a Chabad group, a non-Lubavitch group, but they were but also Nusachari, that was Chabad. Anshe Sfard, again, two of them, those are Hasidic shuls. Here, Manhattan, Lower East Side, Anshe Sfard, several Anshe Sfards. The Tovisker, Anshe Lubavitch in Williamsburg Synagogue. I remember there was in Borough Park, there's the Lubavitch shul, they're over 100 years old. There were in Bronzeville a bunch, Chabad, Lubavitch, and Nusachari shuls, and in East New York, and throughout America, there were places in what that's not only like even like St. Louis, or places. There was famously Sheboygan, Wisconsin, which had a lot of Jews that north of Madison, I think. Seems like the middle of nowhere, but there was a vibrant Jewish community and a lot of Chasidim, and particularly a lot of Chabad Chasidim. Again, the whole phenomenon of Nusachari shuls. So this is here's again, Lower East Side showing different Hasidic, right? You have Belzer, Blazhev. It's like 1918. Bohush, those original Sadigera is original. So there's a bunch of Sadigera related different dynasties, but then you have their those are Chernobylers more. Karlin, Kobrin, those are more like related to the northern, like Lithuanian. Slonim is also, Danaev, we said it's also. And then you also have Lubavitch here. You have Premishlan, and that is it's a personal one because the Thaylors are Premishlaners, and my grandfather's grandfather was the head of the Chaver Kaddish of the Premishlan in New York, which meant things related to both synagogue and the burial, of course, Chaver Kaddish and other things. And see here in Williamsburg, Bronzeville, as we mentioned. So I'm just showing how this atlas is bringing how the Hasidic movement spread even to the New World, as they used to call it, these shores. This incredible picture. I think this is, I forget where. Like here. This is Husiatin. This is one of the great Ruzhiner dynasties, Husiatin descendants. So they built these majestic palatial synagogues and residences. And this is already at a point where it's been already falling apart, but you could still see like this original elegant. And this is nothing, I wouldn't say nothing, but I'd say the Rebbes of other Ruzhiners had even bigger, even more opulent. Right. So, by the way, Husiatin is also an extinct Hasidus now of the Ruzhiner branch. So we could go on and on. And the reason I'm showing this is also just to show the linkage from the early periods of Hasidus until now, and just showing like what the milieu in which Rabbi Yitzchok was. Born in 1880. If you want, I'll show a picture of him soon. Becomes Rebbe at the age of 40 in 1920, and is Rebbe for almost like 30 years, and passes away like half a year shy of his 70th birthday, or less than a half year, something like that. And this is after he was imprisoned multiple times. The culmination in 1927 by the Soviets under the new Stalinist regime. And he was almost executed, what is it called? Executed. But his sentence was commuted through international pressure. He left shortly thereafter, spent time in the 1930s in Latvia, and then to Poland. And he was in Warsaw and in Espatsk until World War II broke out, at which point he had to escape the Nazis. You see Tzaddikim in revolutionary Russia and the USSR in 1917, 1964. So here are different of the Rebbes, and again, the Rebbe Yitzchok, Lubavitch was not the exclusive Rebbe under the Soviets, but he's facts are he was the most, seems like most, influential, active in the limelight. He was the one, it seems like he was the one who was doing the most underground activities for ways to try to maintain, preserve traditional Judaism against the quickly radical sweeping winds of not only secularism but militant atheism of the Soviets. And so that once he got there in the 30s, he was more open to reestablish the Lubavitch Yeshiva, known as Tomchei Tmimim, in Poland, which became very popular. I'm just trying to see if it's on this map. Tomchei Tmimim, you see there, Otvatsk. Otvatsk was like a suburb to Warsaw. There's Warsaw, it's that far. And there's a whole, like, really almost like out of a suspense thriller film or novel, how the previous Rebbe escaped the Nazis, how he was trapped in Warsaw during the bombings of 1939, the beginning of the war, seeing people just dying around him, and somehow even the buildings he was in collapsed, but he was saved. And then in the greatest of ironies, that was members within the German army, albeit not the SS per se, but still people who even had half or quarter Jewish bloodlines that worked this whole underground operation to smuggle the previous Rebbe from Warsaw through, believe it or not, to Berlin. They drove him all the way to Berlin, the lion's den lair, so to speak, and then put him on a plane to Stockholm. It was like really like almost like think of the end of the Casablanca movie type of scene. And that is how he escaped. And then from Stockholm on a boat, ship, sorry, I should say. One of the last ships crossing from northern Europe to America, made it to the American shores at the beginning of 1940, settled in Crown Heights. That's how the Chabad movement finished, continued. His son first came with his older son-in-law. A year and a half later, his younger son-in-law, which was his eventual successor, Nachman Shneerson, came. Here's a picture of him. Yosef Yitzchok. He was quite photogenic, and he's even semi-posed at times. And he didn't have an issue of him being pictured without a hat or smoking or even being jovial. There are quite a few pictures. He was quite an open, expressive individual. So this is him. In this picture, he has more of a stern look, but just gives you a sense. And he actually wasn't fully healthy, and neither was his father or grandfather. There was health issues in his family. So in this picture, he's like, I would say in his mid-50s, but he aged quite quickly, unfortunately, because he had multiple health issues. Not only certain heart, mainly at the end it was MS, multiple sclerosis, and then a heart attack at the end. And it was a Shabbos morning that he passed away in 770 Eastern Parkway in his bedroom. Now, this is a good place to mention early on, but I want to just say again, I know Zusha, Steve is dedicating tonight to his dear friend who's not well, and hopefully you'll say the name again. I do want to mention that our dear friend, a member of Cholent and colleague, and someone who would be to have tuned in here if I would have nudged him to, and that is Levi Keller. So for those who were tuned in last week, remember that I was talking about Lady, not being in after his third brain surgery for cancer, cancerous tumor, and that he was turning for the worse. Then, and I said last week that I wanted to just finish what we were doing earlier last week because I was going to go to the hospital, which I did the next day, Thursday. But it was just declining, and he eventually passed away on Shabbat, 8 a.m., which is the exact time of the day of the week, time, an hour when the previous Bavitcher Rebbe passed away, the Shabbos of Bo, 8 a.m. And in Levi's case, Levi Keller's case, his oldest brother was the only one there in his room, whose name is Yosef Yitzchok. There was something very auspicious in that. So Levi, we love you. Incredible. We gave him as much comfort and ease to the end of his life as possible, and he was so special. And with the funeral was Sunday, and Shiva, just pouring out of love and care and uniting people together, both here and those the community he was living with in Dresden, Germany, really bonded us, and hopefully we'll have more to share about some special individual Levi. Maybe I'll get a picture up of him also at some point. Yeah.
Yossi,
did you know him, Levi?
Of course I knew Levi well.
What did you ask?
Is the family still sitting? Is Shiva still going on?
Yes, they're sitting till Friday afternoon, so you can still go tomorrow. And if you want,
Aaron is there too.
Aaron is still here. Yes.
All right.
So you can go. So I would highly recommend. Do you have the address?
Yeah, Isaac gave it to me. I would believe another make it.
Yeah. So I highly recommend that. And again, in a way, the immortality of his soul is what, by our awareness of him, keeping him in our not only thoughts and minds, and also we were talking about, apparently he wrote a lot. He was just a half a year away from completing his dissertation or PhD, and I don't even know what area of physics. So there, and he came from a prominent Chabad family. His father was one of the main point people to make Havdalah. It's made for the Rebbe at the end of Shabbat, and also was an author, wrote different books, particularly on the Beit HaMikdash and the temple and other areas. He was important to the Chaver Kadisha. He drove the hearse car in the community for many years. So that's also a bit of an irony here. Yeah, and so the father passed away when Levi was still a kid, even pre-teen. So he grew up without a father a lot. And I think I mentioned that his sister, who was even younger than him, passed away from something similar. And he lost a brother years earlier through just a pure accident. So, yeah. So out of the 10 siblings, they've lost 3 under the age of 40. So may this already finally end and be the kapara, and be only life and love and light for henceforth with. Amen. And this is also the challenges we have in life. To plug it in with the parsha too, that the Israelites, the Bnei Yisrael, make it to the sea, and they're to have the sea in front of them, and they have the Egyptians pursuing them behind them. They're trapped. You give up. In fact, what do we say? Oh, thank you. Yes, by the way, Yossi gave us in the chat a link to one of Levi's presentations. Thank you. So I'm going to even link. It's a cloud, I think. I'm at least clicking it on, so I'll have it even when we turn off here. Okay.
It's a remarkable presentation on the Haskalah.
Oh, really? And that's
He gave
cool.
that at 21. Yeah, he gave it at
Wow.
21.
Amazing. So yeah, and just that we all came from the same place, so to speak. And so how about this? This feeling maybe we'll do a Niggun a bit, and then we'll do a little parsha and whatever other goodies, and we'll see how far we go tonight. I do have things. I have a personal move. I'm moving tomorrow. Not too far in the same building. I'm still moving, packing, moving, schlepping. So I do want to get a head start on that tomorrow. So let's see if we'll go much later. And again, tonight we had Elly doing a presentation first, so things are a little in reverse. So maybe we won't cover as much on the parsha tonight and other things what's ended, but that's.
Baruch, I feel I need to remind you that it's really it's almost 1:30 here on the East Coast, and if I'm like anybody else on this Zoom, we are all, at least I am, completely on overload based on what we've just heard and seen.
Okay, good. So how about we'll just keep it not too overload information. We'll do a Niggun or two, and then just use, let's say, the next half is 20 minutes to half hour. It sounds good. Just to go over highlights of Parsha things, does that sound okay?
I'll defer to others in the Kehillah.
Okay. We have one yes, and we have many silence. I'll tell you why, because otherwise, if we don't do anything to Parsha, then I feel almost naked, you know what I mean, or lacking something. So let's do this. I'll do a Niggun. I'll tell you also why, because Rabbi Yitzchok Lubavitch was also Reb Zalman's Rebbe, also more, you could say, even perhaps likely than the next Rebbe, Nachman. So how about we'll do it?
That was not almost. I mean, definitely more. Reb Zalman would say that the Reb Yosef Yitzchok was my Rebbe.
Right, exactly. So we'll sing a song that was the most favorite of Rabbi Yosef Yitzchok. Okay. And this Niggun is called the Beinoni. We know that Tanya is known as the book for the Beinoni, and the aim of the Chabad Chassid is to try to become at least the Beinoni, which in normal Hebrew parlance would mean, the average person. But no, that's the whole point of Tanya, is showing the average person ain't so average. It's like takes a lot of work to become average. Okay, most of us are below average. You know what I mean? And then to become a tzaddik, it's almost out of the ballpark. Very few people could get there, but that's not our what's the word? That shouldn't be our objective in life, to become a tzaddik. It's something, if you have born with it, have you work and somehow become one. If you're, I mean, if there's definitions of the tzaddik of Tanya, which is different than the definition of tzaddik of, let's say, Rebbe Elly Melech of Lizhensk and Elly Melech. So when in Chabad they say Beinoni, it's as, if not greater, possibly than in other places when they say tzaddik. Just say. So the Niggun that the Frierdiker Rebbe loved, called the Beinoni, was actually composed by the great Hasidic Chabad composer Rabbi Aaron Chaitana. A lot of amazing Niggunim are from him. And this is the Niggun he brought to Rabbi Yosef Yitzchok, who loved it, and would sing it at his Farbrengen. So this is how it goes. That's the Niggun. It's a little shorter because I didn't double each stanza. That's how you would sing it usually. But that's the gist of it. There are other Niggun. It so happens to be Yosef Yitzchok actually he self-admittedly didn't have a great voice per se. He said he doesn't have a good, he's not a Bauman Nagin, he can sing well, but he has a chush Niggun. He has a deep sensitivity, talent, understanding of music. Like he could, there's certain people that could analyze music well, understand the piece, like music theory or analysis, but are lousy musicians, right? Something like that. So therefore, this Niggun of Yosef Yitzchok not only sang, he would analyze, and the Rebbe who spoke most about the characteristics of certain Niggunim and the stands and all that, and sometimes in quite minute detail, was the Rebbe Yosef Yitzchok Rebbe, and he was the one who promoted that they publish, compiled, music sheet, composition books of Chabad Niggunim, collect them and write them out in notations. And so in the 1940s, began from it's called Sefer HaNiggunim Chabad, and he also established the Chabad Musical Society, Niggun Society, called Nichoach, which means like Reach Nichoach, pleasant smell. But the word Nichoach is an acronym for Nigune Chasidei Chabad. And in there are in quite a few of the Niggunim, there's a description by the Rebbe Yosef Yitzchok himself that he, over the years, spoke about certain Niggunim and described them. So he was he loved Chasidim, very Niggunim, and he was very Niggun oriented. So that's why I'm feeling that it was important for us to sing this Niggun. There are others, hopefully we'll get through down the line, but actually, what other Niggun do we have with the Parsha? Who knows, who could think? What's the number one hit in our Parsha, Niggun-wise?
Para in pajamas?
What?
Para in pajamas? No.
No, is Shirat Hayam, is the Niggun after splitting the Red Sea, Az Yasher Moshe, right? So we say not then we'll sing. So we traditionally there are 10 songs, right? And the song of the sea is the first. Then there's in Chukat, there's another song. Miriam, then there's the Hazinu song. But at the end, and there's others. We know the Haftorah of the Parsha is Devorah's song, and so on. And the 10th song is reserved for the Mashiach time, Shir Chadasha or Shir Chadash, going from feminine, either both in feminine and masculine form, the new song, the 10th song. And it's also associated with the harp, not only there's a harp of 8 strings of the future, some even say 10 strings. And so it'll be real rock, ultimately, doesn't mean just the equipment will be, we'll be able to be expressing its highest way of Niggun song, which in fact will most probably be that we all contribute to the 10th song. It will be a unified song where all of our songs will be, it's as if we each compose one bar of the most majestic symphony, right? And it all comes together in unity, in harmony. So just saying that also to, again, as warm-up for our Tu BiShvat song circle this Sunday night in Crown Heights, that anyone wants more information, please let me know and come. I said I was going to try to get a way to show the amazing imagery thereof. Okay, so just very snippets for the Parsha, and I totally understand that people's attention spans are going south by the minute at this point. It's because it's on my end too, in a way. So the Parsha, I don't know how to do this super quickly, but let's just lay out the scheme and then just tell it, we could all find things. Here's the story. It's already, I think we're at least around like the 3rd year going over like Parsha things. I think we did last year and 2 years ago even. And there's stuff, I remember last year we went quite in depth about the Parsha. So if people do want more in depth, you could go into so it's recorded from last year. I think we went more in depth, like on issue. Okay, let me just lay out the Parsha so everyone gets the highlights, and then we'll see what we can fill. So it begins with the Bnei Yisrael leaving Egypt and going in circumlocucious ways. In fact, doing this fake retreat to throw off the Egyptians and almost lure them to the sea, and then the famous splitting of the Red Sea. And we could go into a little detail on that. And actually, according to, I think even the Talmud, Mezritch, they didn't actually split through the sea, but it was more like a U. It was just like a tactic to get the Egyptians in the mud of the split seabed, the waters to split the seabed, and then drown them. But it wasn't right. Then the famous, again, the song of Moshe, and then follow up with Devorah, which is very interesting and very amazing that we have this great female persona. And in fact, as there's certain teachings that Miriam's song was essential, not just as a repeat, and not because she was Moshe's and Aaron's sister, but because in fact her going, both praying, as you may know, the Mezritch, that actually Aaron and Miriam and Moshe's parents, right? Amram and Yocheved, in fact, separated, right? First was born Miriam, then Aaron, and then Moshe wasn't born yet. And the decree already went out that they could kill the firstborns. So Amram said, therefore, why have any more children? If it's a boy, they're going to kill him. But Miriam had a prophecy that she will have a baby brother who will be the savior of the people and free them from Egypt. So she convinced her father and mother to get back together again. That's how we got Moshe. And then she was so protective and so trusted in her vision, prophetic prophecy, that she even was the one that went out to the Nile when Moses was left there. I should just check and make sure he's fine. And that's when Basi or Batia, daughter of Pharaoh, shows up and finds Moshe and can take her. That's when Miriam tactfully intervenes. Oh, I'll get a Jewish nurse, which is the mother, and that's how Moshe was still kept in touch that way. And even as being raised as Prince of Egypt, as we know the famous cats, right? What's it? Famous Disney movie, right? Prince of Egypt. So that whole thing, going to the sea, to the water side, and praising and having trust of saving, that Miriam faith is what carried over to the splitting Red Sea for the people who also have faith. That again, they're at the edge of the sea with reeds and all that, Yam Suf, and then here too, just follow the prophecy, so to speak. Follow what, and then things will turn out fine. So they're famously right, that whole part. What happens after splitting the Red Sea? This is the second half of the parsha. People don't delve too much into it because it's the second, because splitting the Red Sea gets all the attention. But really, there's multiple things happening here, and each of them is profound and deserves its own unpacking, which obviously we won't have time tonight. So first thing is, after splitting the Red Sea, they wander 3 days without water. So isn't that an irony? They were just around a bunch of water. Now they have no water, 3 days. And they finally get to Marasa, and what's going on there? It's the water is bitter. They can't even drink the water, because it's almost like saying, you found this, you're thirsty, and in the desert you go to finally see water ahead, and it turns out it's like ocean water, right? It's the ocean beside, and it's all salty. You can't even drink it. Something like that. So and they start complaining. So this is complaint number one. Just 3 days after the greatest miracles, the people are already fetching. Where's the filtered water? Why are you serving me tap water? No, just joking. But you get the point. And the bitter water. What sweetens the water? God says, okay, the people are complaining. We'll give them what they want, sweet water. What do? What does God say to Moshe? Take a piece of bitter wood of bitterness, different opinions, what kind of wood it was, what from olive or something else, and throw it in. The word for wood here is eitz. Okay, and that ironically changes, almost like homeopathy, where you throw in the thing itself in a lower dosage could transform it, make it. And incidentally, just reading eitz, and now we're coming on to Tu BiShvat, ki ha'adam eitz hasadeh, for the human is the eitz, the wood or tree of the field. So there's this also. There's even this in itself. We could go into this for a minute or two at least. What is the word eitz? Eitz is related. It doesn't say ilan. Ilan is a whole tree. So it doesn't say ki adam ilan hasadeh. The person is eitz. What is eitz? So it means, of course, it could be a piece of wood from a tree. It doesn't have to be separate. It's deeper. In Hebrew, eitz has the same letters with like eitzah, giving advice, being in a source, the source of wisdom, the source of where things that seem that are counterintuitive or seem like are the opposites. But if you tap into there, you could transform to sweet. Right? The eitz, the wood, the source of advice, is from a tree. A tree has roots. That's what we're saying, that even though the tree is bitter, the wood itself is bitter, but if you go deeper to the roots of the tree, eventually you'll get to a point that is beyond bitter and sweet. And like the teachings we have from Baal Shem Tov and others, once you hit there, you could transform it into sweetness. All right? And so you have that part. Other teachings, if you want to know, the name of the place is Marata, has the same letters as Hamar, which means date. There's different, if we have, we'll see, I don't know if we mamish have time, but we have the Degel Machne Ephraim, the Baal Shem Tov's grandson. There's great Torahs on this. The other thing that's happening so what happens after this, okay, the Jews complain once and they bitter water, they got their water sweet, like going, and right? Incidentally, the splitting of the sea itself is a transformation. Because water, the sea is like the sea when things, the realm of hiddenness, of coveredness. We spoke about this a few weeks ago, the world of iskasi, amid iskasi, concealment with fish. When you split the sea, it means you're transforming the world of concealment to the world of revelation, revealing the deepest mysteries, the greatest teachings, right? Because water also represents Torah. Okay. So what happens after oh, by the way, this with the bitter waters, this is when God tells the people that I won't bring any more illness on you because I am God who's your healer. Ani Hashem Rafecha, that very thing line. Okay, next incident, they okay, from there they go to a place where there are 12 wells and 70 date trees. And so finally they get some fresh water, 12, each tribe, each gets their own water. Okay, good, right? Oh, good oasis time. But that's short-lived because they travel and a few days, a couple weeks later, however you want to say it, basically within a month of leaving Egypt, they're already complaining again. What? They don't have the bread, the right meat they want. They don't have the bread they want, which is bizarre because they seem like they have way more than enough cattle and animals for meat. And I'm sure they had enough wheat even and different aspects. It says that they had with them. And not only that, they had so much stuff and they were already trading with the Bedouin tribes of the desert, selling oil. So what's the pshat here? So that shows that they were going for something deeper, not just that they wanted more. The way I understand it is, not as much they complained, they were saying all the stuff that we brought out, we're carrying, that's still in the natural realm. But we just experienced the supernatural of God splitting the sea for us, God making the water sweet for us. So we want everything to come from above, from heaven. It's just down to us, right? So in fact, so in a way, God responds in kind and says, okay, so I will. I'll for sure give you, because bread is more important than meat for essential living. Meat is more for luxury lifestyle, especially in those days. Not as essential. So the mun was a priority, therefore it's done during the morning, whereas the fowl, the slug meat, only came at night. But they're still giving it. Yet at certain point, in certain places where the months described, it came down like water. Even though the man, as we spoke about more than in the last couple of years, both the parsha. Yeah. If you remember, we did this whole thing of cooking with fed, the food, the Jewish food fed thing, and made different dishes. This was like 2 years ago. Things. So if you remember, for man, we did a whole thing around tofu, right? Because it has no real. You can make any tofu taste like anything. That was our modern day form of man. So it had that miraculous element to it that you could will it to any flavor you want. It's certainly, I suppose, texture too, maybe, I don't know. I don't know if you ever watched Star Trek where they have you could just go to the counter and just order something and just appears out of thin air, whatever food or drink you want. something a little bit, well, here you had it already, just changed whatever for you want. You had the man, you want it to taste like chocolate ice cream with chocolate, vanilla, strawberry, etc. You get the point. But now the thing was, it was also came down, it was sandwich, it was protected by dew. So usually what's the difference between man and our normal bread we eat today is that man is gifted from above without any neat work from our own part. Whereas bread from wheat, we have to plant, harvest, and chaff, and mill, and make the dough and bake. And so multi-process work, quite hard work to get the end product of bread. I know this, my brother-in-law is a baker, and even him, just starting from the flour, it's a really long, extreme process, especially being that he's a maestro of sourdough. He's probably the best sourdough in Brooklyn, if not New York. Just what is it? Head plug.
You want to plug his establishment?
Plug, yeah, for crust bread. Anyone wants to know how to get them, more of the, let me know. It's addictive, I'm telling you. And also for people who have issues with celiac or other things with gluten, and this specific sourdough, it's the real sourdough where people even like that can eat it. Okay. But so still, it takes it's there, it's from here. So in water coming from heaven too, there's dew. Dew just comes down, whereas rain is associated more with us praying for rain, for things related to our work down here. So the man, as much as it is associated with dew, but it is at times also associated with rain, because even when we're gifted things from above, it's not just to be passive about it. We still should put in some effort in something in the process, even if it's a bit. Therefore, in this case of the man, the people still had to collect the man. They had to put in their effort. It didn't just miraculously wind up on their plates or in their kitchens. They had to go out and collect. It's true, tzaddik, it fell in the front door. The regular people a little bit out. The wicked, they had to really go out. But that's the point. And in fact, it's the linkage. Moshe made the first blessing of Birchat HaMazon, blessing after the meal, is because it's the blessing for the mud. All right, some say that in the desert they made the bracha hamotzi lachem min hashamayim. There are commentaries that say they actually said it. There's also a thing, by the way, to recite the parsha of the man every day, specifically this week, especially this past Tuesday, and then it's a good skula for parnas, for good livelihood. So there, and also the man in Chumash it says to preserve part of it for generations, for posterity, and in fact they did. They kept it in the Holy Ark. In fact, it stayed fresh. To remind them that even if when they're working, even in the non-miraculous times, meaning times when there are less miracles, but still remember that it's possible for the miracles to still happen. Maybe not by man coming down from heaven, but in our livelihood, in the bread, so to speak, we're working on making. So right, and the man here is also one of the first places where the mitzvah Shabbos is mentioned. Right. In fact, Shabbos was already during the bitter water period already. That's brought down, I think, in Gemara. But some of the mitzvot were already given then. Shabbos, Paraduma, Judas Prudence, right, the red heifer Judas Prudence. But here openly it says that, right, people should not collect the man on Shabbos. They should stay at home. This is also the origin of the idea of Eruv Techumim, not to walk too far out of settled places on Shabbat. That's one it's a thing. You're not going to walk more than 2,000 feet or something, 1,000, 2,000 feet outside of a city in rural area on Shabbat, unless you went there in advance and placed bread and something else like that. So So all that is from this parsha, the man. And in fact, already then, here too, even after the people complaining, and they got the man and the Slavs, so all the miracles are happening. And God tells them, by the way, don't collect in Shabbos. And already he told them, if you collect too much, too little doesn't make a difference. And also all your leftovers will spoil. Like everything was miraculously happening. And they're told you're getting double for Friday, for Shabbos. But still, some people went out to try to collect. So again, God is upset, so to speak, and he tells Moshe, what's going on with these people? Don't they realize it's Shabbos? Look, I gave them this beautiful gift. What's the term? I gave you this beautiful Shabbos. How could they go and try to collect even on Sabbath? And in fact, Moshe Rabbeinu is also quite humble here. He says, who are we to complain so much? It's like there's also descriptions of what the man was like. And I'm just saying, okay, it says after this admonishment from God through Moshe, the people listened finally. And they collected. Also, this is the origin in our parsha, the idea of having 3 meals on Shabbat. We said, and right, it says in verse that today you won't collect, you'll rest. Today you won't collect, you won't go out and try. The word hayom is used 3 times. I'm just mentioning this because we mentioned this when we were learning earlier, like half a year ago, whenever it was, when we were going through the significance of Shalosh Shudas and such. Incidentally, even Malacha Malka, which we were studying a couple months ago, is also associated with this because we said that we want to pair, like there were 2 portions per day given of food. So let's say Tuesday, you got breakfast, like a solid breakfast and solid dinner in your month portions. So Friday, you got 2 times 2 portions, right? So you got for Friday, that's Erev Shabbos, Friday morning, and then for the first meal, Shabbat night. And you had 2 more meals. But so you did for the first day meal, but then the afternoon was a composite of the 3rd meal of what we call Shabbat that went into Malacha Malka itself. And that was to honor the Shabbos going out too. So then what happens after the month story? Right? We just went through, people kvetching number 2. There's a 3rd kvetching because they continue traveling, and then they come place. Not only it's bitter, there isn't even bitter water. There's absolutely no water. Remember, there was already one point they did have enough water. Now, no water. And here they start complaining again. What, you slept us out, Moshe, for just so we die from thirst. Now at this point, by the 3rd time being complained, is already Moshe is like really thinks the people are really out to get him, so to speak, right? Like I don't want to use like crass metaphors, like someone who's like some politicians whose favorable rating percentage dips like drastically, and he's going around. Moshe is even at a point he's afraid to go out there and walk through the camps of the people, afraid that they'll stone him. And so God says, no worries. Moshe, don't be afraid of the people. You'll gain their trust and give them order by go hit in the rock. It says not on the rock, in the rock, and water will come out in this in Horowitz. And that's what happened. So in fact, in this version, unlike the version later we're going to see in Bamidbar, where God says just to talk to the rock, and there Moshe actually hits the rock. In this case, God tells Moshe to hit the rock. Okay, which explains why later Moshe, even though he was told to speak to the rock, he hit the rock because he remembers it right when he left here in Egypt after splitting Red Sea, where God told him to hit the rock. And there's a lesson here. Sometimes you gotta actually use the stick here in a compassionate way, of course, whatever that means, to use some gevura. It's also in a way for something that's hard like a rock, you could respond with something more firm to get through. Okay, so this was complaint number 3 already, and from this segues the final episode of the parsha, which is the showdown with Amalek and the famous Moshe his hands being propped up by Aaron and Hur, his nephew, and then them being victorious against Amalek. And again, last year we went through a lot in detail. Now I'm remembering, we spoke a lot about Amalek and not only his doubt and modes of war and battle. I will just share this one very general vart. It's very general, and it's what really ties the parsha together, right? That what's happening here at the end of the parsha, not only, even though the people, again, went through a lot of complaints, seems like they quickly crashed. They went from the highest of revelations of splitting the Red Sea, that even the Shifcha, the maiden servants, saw the God in fullest revealed form like Moshe. And then like within 3 days later already, and they know that they're going to the worship of to receive the Torah, and they're thrilled about it, counting down on it. Just telling you how much that even though you're so obvious that the right thing to do, but when push comes to shove, important times, the other side, the challenges could become really strong, or even could even affect us psychologically. Precisely the idea of like from the highs, and then sometimes people crash. It's not like this gradual integration back to normal, but people can just like quickly. So here we see this here, but actually, it was with all this, they still hung into there, and with the battle with Amalek, it wasn't even everyone. It had to be selected. Yeshua had to select certain people that were still trusted, fully committed, that still had full faith to vanquish the Amalek. So it's interesting. So here we're promoting war. We're promoting to fight Amalek through and totally wipe them out. Whereas at the beginning of the parsha, right, at the actual, when being pursued by the Egyptians and Pharaoh, there the pasuk says is dissuading the people from fighting. Not only that, even dissuading from prayer. The famous Yerushalmi that says, and when they got to the waters of Yamsuf, the people split in 4 camps. One said, "Oh, suicide pact, we're jumping in the sea, game over." The other said, "Game over, but we're not going to kill us. We're just going to hands up. We're going to go back to Egypt." And with the spirit. The third group said, "We're going to go and fight the Egypt. Turn around, fight the Egyptians." So, like almost like the Warsaw Ghetto resistors, fighters against the Nazi problem. And then the fourth group said, "We're going to daven, pray to God, right? What could be so?" And but to all 4, no, that's not the way to be. Not even to fight and not even to pray. What does God tell Moses? God even tells Moses, even you don't pray to me. Enough with all these words in a way, right? Isn't that surprising and ironic? God's saying, it's time is not to pray, but just to march forward with just absolute faith, like Nachshon, son of Aminadab. Just walk into the water. Even if it's rising to your chin and your nostrils, keep on walking. And then it splits with faith. And I mean, the lesson, there's a Lubavitch Rebbe in the early years of his leadership, he explained these 4 groups. The first group, drowning in the sea, is those that want to just like, not give up. It's just, they have challenges from the outside world. They just want to immerse themselves in the sea of study, of Torah. And study and not to get involved with outside, right? There's that camp. Then there's a second camp wants to say go back to Egypt. Is that they say, okay, we have to deal with the world, Egypt, but we're going to go, but without any real. We're not going to commit ourselves. We're going to be like out of place, without any passion, without any awe, out of the era. We're just going to do things perfunctory, like because we're we give up. We're going to be like almost automatons, almost even if not physical slaves, but mental slavery, as the Bob Marley song goes. So that too is not right. The other one is to fight. You think what's wrong? Fighting? No, but sometimes you're fighting is you're building up more the energy, making a whole issue. It's making the opponent something more of a foe, more of something standing in the way. And even praying is there is a time to pray, but then there's a time to do. So the bottom line is just follow with total self-sacrifice mode into the sea. And when you do that, that automatically will wipe out all the negativity of the outside world. Just right. And there's times not to study, not to fight, not even to pray, but just to do. So why is but by the end with Amalek they are told, instructed to fight, whereas with the Egyptians not to fight. So the beautiful answer is, see, the difference was when your opponent is behind you, like the beginning of the parsha, and when you're being chased, it's behind you in your path, then don't look back. As the famous line goes, don't look back. Keep focused to the future. Don't give too much value to things that happen behind you. Past. Don't turn around and start fighting. They're changing. Keep on going. Ignore it almost. There's greater, more important things to do ahead. If you're going to turn around and start fighting with things of the past, then you're going to get stuck in the past and it'll even take you down. You won't be able to move ahead. So in these cases, don't fight it. Just march forward. And then automatically take care of whatever's chasing you behind you. Whereas if your opponent is in front of you, that's what Amalek was. It was in the path to Mount Sinai. They stopped them, challenging in the front. You're holding it back from getting ahead? Yeah. Here I will do the right and just and proper way of battle to get rid of, especially with a foe like Amalek, which represented the lowest of the low, and also being the most fierce in a way, most challenging, both being the first to start up with the Israelites is the famous parable of the first one who jumps into the hot water of the tub, and that cools it off everyone else, so to speak. And also the Amalek represents doubt, and also Amalek represents the klipa, the negative toxic forces of the seich, chachma, bin, and das, of the mind. And we know the instruction to wipe out Amalek through and through, that it's the only one of the nations that not to leave any remnant over. So like Amalek represents the most extreme antithesis, anything Judaic and holy. So in fact, it was almost a necessary thing for the Israelites to confront their worst enemy up front right away, even before they received the Torah. And once they have that aspect of initial victory, that empowers them to continue on later. And yes, they're victorious with Amalek, but still, as the word is Yad al-Kos Yud-Kei, the throne of God is still incomplete. The name of God is incomplete. It's only Yud-Kei, not Vav-Kei. So only one is ultimately vanquished, which is actually the harbinger to the Messianic era, which is why, if you look in Mishnah Torah of the Rambam, the laws of wiping out Amalek precede is like the preamble almost to the end of the book where it describes the Messianic age. So there is some correlation, association there. So again, we have to know when to fight. We have to know when not to fight. To know when to pray. We have to know when not to pray. Study not to pray. And most importantly, know how to be surrendering in the best of ways, Mesirat Nefesh, for a higher cause in a way that takes care of it all. And maybe we'll just end off a bit like the whole idea of this whole notion that we're channeling when we're doing such actions, when we are supernatural of ourselves, we go beyond even our own rational, emotional, behavioral expectations, tap into that supernatural aspect of us, and that connects with the super natural of the universe. Right, so the universe runs majority of times by the laws of nature, endowed from the beginning of creation by the Creator, and things, sun keeps on rising in the east, not west, and on and on. But then every once in a while, there's this phenomenon called miracle that happens. Okay, and splitting the Red Sea is one, and there are other miracles too. In a way, splitting the Red Sea is the most word, I would say theatrical, most apparent in a way, that's being miraculous. Dramatic too, certainly, and productive too. And in ways, the miracle of the splitting of the Red Sea was greater than, let's say, the miracle of the plague. And there's a nuance, but I'll just mention it because the miracle, let's say, of turning the Nile into blood was a miracle that it became blood, but once the miracle ended, it reverted automatically to its original state of water, which is in fact why it was even blood. A Jew could drink from the same thing and he would experience water. Now, the splitting of the Red Sea, and this is based on certain teachings, and I don't know if we have time to go too deep. In a way, it was two miracles happening. One miracle was that the water split, but it transformed so to its core in that way that almost became its natural state for that momentary time. So then we needed a second miracle to revert it back to water, to return it back to water, to drown the Egyptians. Okay, so there was like this deeper. It was almost like water's own. Not only was it miraculous, splitting the Red Sea, but there was this temporary transformation of the laws of nature of the water of the Red Sea, and now it stands like towers. You hear? It's a bit of nuance, but great, but makes a big difference if you think about it. And then in fact, that's why Baal Shem Tov echoes this too. And it's based on a midrash that says that the waters return to its strength. The word leitano means letnao, to the same letters as to its condition. Already beginning of creation, God created the Red Sea on condition that in year 3,330, what is it? 2,448. That's what year 2000, which is 3,335 years ago. That in this date in the pre-dawn or dawn and morning time, that the words that is, so it wasn't an overriding program of miracle as much as it was already embedded in the program of nature that this period of time, a few hours, whatever it was, the water will behave in this whole other way. Okay, so what's going on here? We're seeing an almost fusion of nature and miracle, showing that even miracle itself is merely another way of expression of nature. And conversely, it makes us appreciate that even things that we take for granted of just nature is itself the most miraculous experiences, whether it's birth, even the sunrise. You could think of so many things that move us, and wow, we feel that it's miraculous, even though it's just part of the climatology, biology of the way things have always run. So I see we're losing gradually people. So I think this is a good time to wind down. Again, there's more to, of course, more to go. And I'll end off with a song for Tu BiShvat that I came up with a few years ago. A very simple song, and then we'll just sign out. And again, I have a busy day tomorrow. So here it goes. Ki ha'adam etz hasadeh, 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 ki ha'adam etz hasadeh. Ki ha'adam etz hasadeh, ki ha'adam etz hasadeh. For we all are trees in the field, for we all are trees of the field, for we all are trees of the field, for we all are trees of the field. For we all are trees of the field, for we all are trees of the field, for we all are trees of the field. Ki ha'adam and ki ha'isha gamken etz hasadeh. Wow. So perfect timing, Natalie, when we have Israel morning in the house. So we're going not only coast to coast, but continent to continent. And yeah, we're just winding down. I don't know if you were following before just on Facebook. I knew to tune in right now. Just so happened to be tuned in mamash right time. Yeah, so we had Elly Moseson was on earlier, our mutual friend, and he gave a whole presentation on early Hasidism and stuff in his detailed way. So I love this. He started off and you're here at the end, and we used to hang out together a lot back in the day. So great connection. And Natalie, it's been a while since you've been on. So shalom, shalom, varach. Jonathan remembers you being on, as Zusha does, and there were some others that were on that just left. So if you want to say anything, say hello, welcome, a shout out from the Israeli bus.
Boker Tov. Yeah, I'm on the bus, and I just saw you're giving a lesson, so I decided to say hi, and it was nice to hear a little bit of the song. Mm-hmm. It's been finally raining here in Israel. We had a very, very dry winter, extremely dry, and now it's going to rain every single day for the next week or more. So just in time for Tu BiShvat.
Perfect. That's exactly the way the Talmud describes it, that it is in Israel. That the Beit doesn't begin at the beginning of Shvat or in the middle of Shvat. But for sure here. So we're on target, and even in New York, we've had like one of the longest spells without any snow. And just overnight, we broke it just barely by what? By having half an inch. Yeah. Didn't even stick really. But technically, if it's more than 1/10 of an inch, it's considered no. So anyways, and we're not having any more. Unlike in Israel, that's it. It seems for a while. So total tease. But I'm just so happy that you're getting the rain. People in California have been like overwhelmed by the rain. And,
oh, good.
Yeah, that's a couple weeks ago, and certainly out there in Middle East. I don't know how the Kinneret is, if it's up to the red line or the green line, whatever lines they call it.
I think it's fine. I mean, I don't even know. The thing is that Israel doesn't divert as much water for drinking from there anymore since they started using the desalination plants. So the whole entire center, at least I know of the country, this is a specialist who told me this, drinks desalinated water. So it's not from the kavvanot. It's not like back in the day where we grew up. Yeah. Which also means that the water that we're drinking is not as good. Mm-hmm. And it's definitely not as tasty. And they just like add a ton load of, I don't know, whatever it is they add to water, fluoride, chlorine. Yeah. But it seems to be okay.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Mayim, 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 mayim. Oh, mayim, Moseson. Mayim, 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 mayim. Oh, mayim,
Moseson.
Hey, hey, hey.
Hey,
Right. So really so happy to, and then you're reminding me that I was going to try to find, I was going to get the poster of our Tu BiShvat Seder that we're throwing here in New York. I just wanted to get it so people see it. Hang on. Okay. Here we're gonna. I think I have to do. It may be a little difficult actually because I have to do the WhatsApp on the computer to access it. Oh, I know how to get it. Not. I think I could get it just. I just remembered it's actually on Facebook. Someone put up, so I will get it as we speak, and that's what we will close off with. Just showing the Facebook event. My computer is a little slower. And so, what do you have any? Were you planning on doing anything for Tu BiShvat, Natalie?
No, since I don't have you guys here, then I don't really engage in any proper Jewish activity or celebration. But I found someone who finally gives Hasidus lessons on Tuesdays in Tel Aviv.
Oh,
which was recommended to me by one of the Mishalovins years back.
Mm-hmm.
And then on Facebook, I saw something pop up. So I may try that out. I mean, I probably will, since I'm kind of craving to study something.
Got it. And who is it?
Right. Hold on. It's morning time, so I forgot his name.
Okay.
I'll tell you. Let me tell you in a moment. And yeah, I mean, it is going to be raining here. When is Tu BiShvat?
Sunday night.
Oh, here.
Into Monday. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So okay, go ahead.
Yoshua Engelman.
I'm not sure who that is. Anyways, I'm having difficulty on my end of Facebook and whatever is really super slow. So I can't access. But what I'll do is I will put up both on Nitzotzev and my own Facebook page. I will put the information poster for the Tu BiShvat Seder in Brooklyn of Atika Kaddish and Nitzotzev. For anyone who wants more information out there about it.
So
okay.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Okay, so for people who don't have like a community to go have a meal with, or and then they still want to do something to engage in the holiday, like what would be like, I don't know, is there like a little ceremony one can do, like planting a seed or doing something?
Like that is a great one, planting a seed, or even sapling, to even like something like that's already has some growth, like repotting.
Okay.
Then there's the famous Seder, Kabbalistic Seder that is done, and there's actually almost like a Pesach Seder, Passover Seder. There's 4 parts, there's 4 worlds, 4 cups, there's 3 or 4 different types of fruits, or rather 3 types of fruits, and then incense, herbs sent for the 4, corresponding to the 4 mystical worlds. I will give you more than one source to find such Haggadot that describe it. We were showing earlier, or had links in the chat, but I don't think you have access to it, but you tune in later, to opensiddur.org. One of the main participants of the weekly Zoom runs this amazing website called opensiddur.org. We have all different prayers and piyutim and such, and there he has multiple variations of Tu BiShvat Seder. Another great resource is neohasid.org, run by David Seidenberg, and he has multiple forms of really short version, longer version. Then I actually put one together from these materials, made one compact. If you want, I can email it to you. The version.
Course.
And it's with English, and you could just follow. Like the first world is things that have hard, like shells, with soft insides, like nuts or pomegranate, coconut or something like that. The second world of the Yitzira, Olam Yitzira, is soft outside with hard inside, like what they call stone fruits, right? They have like hard pits inside or things like that. Then the third world, Olam Bria, is that's all edible, like grapes, figs, things like that. And the highest word, Atzilut, is just fragrance, aromas, smell, different aromatherapies, or burning incense. And then different cups of wine or juice is either white wine or juice or red or a mix of both. So there is a form, a protocol to the Seder, to Tu BiShvat Seder. I just muted you temporarily because there was like noise around you there. Okay, so do you want me to email you or text you links to the stuff? Yeah, I'll do that.
Sure,
Okay,
of
I'll do
course.
that.
Thank you.
And then I'll also put up on Facebook for people who want more information for the Sunday night in Brooklyn. Great.
It's hard for me to imagine that there are not going to be a lot of online also opportunities to do a Tu BiShvat Seder in Israel on Israel time.
In Israel time, I'm sure there is. And I'm sure if you do want to go in person, you could skip over, I'm sure in Tel Aviv, multiple. Here in America, the Tu BiShvat Seder has been actually one of those interesting phenomena, customs, that became more popular in the non-Orthodox community. And by doing so, it looped back into the Orthodox community to do it more. For example, I grew up in Lubavitch. We never made Tu BiShvat Seder. But now there's a lot of Chabad shluchim throughout America, especially in campus towns, where have you, where their local Hillel or even Jewish renewal, Reconstructionist or conservative are making seders. So now the Chabad rabbis are making their own to attract, and so it's a beautiful I think thing where you see cross pollination and positively from the more progressive side of Judaism into more traditional. So really, may we all find not only Seder in this way in our lives, and the way things grow, that the early point of the planting, germination, early sprouting is the most crucial time, and whatever little bit happens, that affects the longer growth process. So the way we set it up here, the way we make the Seder, the alignment and the planting now, that will take us through the future months of this new season, all the way towards the end of the year, through the spring into summer and so on. And of course, in less than 2 months, we have the official beginning of spring. Around March 20th, 21st, the time of Nowruz, the Persian New Year is the same. So by us, we're already beginning the beginning. We're already celebrating the beginning of growth, even before the technical spring, even while we're in what seems like more wintry time. And so it shows us our hope and faith and trust already, even when it seems so cold and the opposite of life. But even now, there's the stirrings of that irrepressible force, energy called life. So may that rejuvenate us too in our practices in all ways, to become already more enlivened now. And this is when we need it all the more. When things are colder or darker, it seems less alive. All the more we need to bring ourselves alive. Gewalt. So I'm so happy, Natalie, you tuned in. We were just winding down. And again, keep tuning in more in the future. And others used to be more common. We used to have this cross-continental. Now we have mainly West Coast, East Coast, and in between. So it's good. We're expanding more. And Mamash, it's great to see you, hear from you, and we in the past we've had, if I recall, we had Tu BiShvat seders together. If I recall, more at least one or two, if I recall. So this has been going on for years. Not only children, through our just informal community, we've been doing it. So so may we be all fruity and juicy and bring out all the lusciousness of who we are. And I'll just leave you with homework. If you answer this yourself privately, and maybe we'll share next week. If you were a fruit, what fruit would you be? Okay. You just think about it. What fruit do you identify with most? All right. I see some who maybe papaya or mango. All right. Yeah. All right. I'm getting all hungry now. I'm going to raid the fruit platter. There's still some in the fridge. Okay. Laila tov, Mevarach, Boker tov, Mevarach, Shavua tov, Shabbat shalom. And really, and thank you, Jonathan, for sticking through, even though I know you're phasing out. And Ariel for tuning in later, and Zusha for being here from the beginning and sponsoring tonight. Lena too. Natalie, we mentioned that we're, in addition to Zusha's friend who's not well, who sponsored tonight, we're also commemorating for Levi Keller. So yes, thanks for you there. So now we're going to sign off with the Niggun. We end off usually. Good Shabbos, Jonathan. Good Shabbos. Good Shabbos, Abba, Shusha. Good Shabbos. Good Shabbos, Natalie. Good Shabbos. Good Shabbos, Ariel. Good Shabbos. Good Shabbos, Lena. Good Shabbos. Good Shabbos for those who were on before, such as Danny. Good Shabbos. Good Shabbos, Levi. Good Shabbos. Good Shabbos. Yaakov. Good Shabbos. Good Shabbos. How could we forget Yossi? Good Shabbos. Good Shabbos, Elly. Good Shabbos. Good Shabbos, Esther. Good Shabbos. Good Shabbos. To my family, good Shabbos. Good Shabbos to the whole wide world and Israel and America and everywhere. Good Shabbos. The whole wide world is waiting to sing the song of Shabbos. The whole wide world is waiting to sing the song of Shabbos. I am also waiting to sing the song of Shabbos. I am also waiting to sing the song of Shabbos. And also the song of Shirat Hayam, the song of the sea of this Parsha. So don't forget to sing it. There's also a custom to leave out kasha, buckwheat, or crumbs for the birds outside, because it says the birds didn't interfere, didn't twerp during they were with us at the splitting Red Sea, so we give them. So good Shabbos to all the beautiful singing birds. Also good Shabbos. And may we mamish soar so high like an eagle in the sky. And even when we fall so low, we rise again and spread our wings and fly high. Amen. Amen. And if I will end off, if Natalie, you have anything very, very quickly, a chant, a song or something?
I'm on the bus.
Right, I gotcha. All right.
Yeah.
So have Shabbat Shalom next time. You'll next time you'll whip out your rattle and or your guitar and or your flute, and we'll pray together in this way here. Okay, and so take care, everyone. Have the most liberating, free Shabbos. Amen, amen, aho. And again, really, thanks everyone who stuck and stayed all the way through and through. I know it wasn't that easy this week. Everyone did that. So the Shabbos, I'm going off of Facebook. We're still on here in